All righty. Thank you, my friends, for joining us. We are happy to be back with you guys. We had a little issue with our show on Monday with Dr. Zach Bush, and we were unable to do the show. So really happy to be back, and I'm really excited to be talking with Ken today. He's one of our favorite guests, and if you haven't heard our previous shows with Mr. Ken Rohla, he's an awesome guy. And I don't know what it is. He's really into health, but he's also into so many other subjects, and I'll introduce him in just a second. This is going to be a great show. He titled it, this is the funny thing, and I love it, Mind Control and the Battle for Human Consciousness. So I figure, what better time to do that than Halloween, right? So this is going to be a great show with Mr. Ken Rohla. This is episode 626. So if you guys want to grab the show notes to the sponsors or to any of the links that we talk about, I'll try to do my best to have some good show notes for you. And so those will be available if you guys are listening on the podcast version or on Facebook or on YouTube or anything like that. As soon as we publish the show, it'll be available on extremehealthradio.com/626. So we will make those available to you. We've got some, let me bring up our show guests. We've got some really cool guests. And for those of you that don't know, we broadcast live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time, trying to get to the bottom of this thing that we call health. And if you guys want to join us, you can go to extremehealthradio.com. And this is a good opportunity for you guys, because a lot of the guests that we have on are very busy people, and they take time out of their private practice, or they take time out of their writing or researching to do these shows with us. And it's a really good opportunity for you guys to ask questions. And I'll do my best to sort of jump in and out of the chat room and ask your questions to the guest. But let me take a look at our upcoming show today. Obviously, Ken Rohla, Mind Control and the Battle for Human Consciousness. I just love that title. I mean, you can't beat a title like that, right? That's so great. Then on Friday, we have Dr. Dwight Lundell. He's a medical doctor, and we'll be talking with him about heart disease. So that will be really great. And make sure, did I turn my microphone up? I hope I did. Let me take a look. Yep, my mic is working. Okay, good. So yeah, we'll be talking with Dr. Lundell on Friday, November 2nd about heart disease. So if you have any friends that have heart disease issues or heart issues at all, have them join the live show. And just as an aside as well, if you know of any friends that might be interested in this particular topic with Mr. Ken Rohla, make sure to tag them or share this video with them, this live video, or this pre-recorded video with them as well. We would appreciate that. Or if you have a Facebook group, make sure to send this out to your friends who might be interested in it. Then next Monday, we're going to be talking with Xiren. I love the name, Xiren, and we'll be talking about his journey with Lyme disease and health. And he also has a really cool YouTube channel that is called Know How Things Work, I think. Really cool. And then next Wednesday, we have Dr. Nick Berry, who's the head of Essential Oil Wizardry. I love that. And we'll be talking about his botanical passion and essential oils in particular. So that's going to be a great show. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel or to our podcast on iTunes or on Facebook or anything like that, wherever you're listening or watching this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the episodes. Today we've got Mr. Ken Rohla, and this is going to be a lot of fun. He's the main man behind Fresh and Alive. He's been on our show multiple times, and he's a health educator, a researcher, inventor from New Smyrna Beach, Florida, if you guys are unfamiliar with his work. And he offers cutting edge sort of unique products on his website, as well as services, and he's really just researching a lot, and he's really into natural health and natural healing and raw food and nutrition and superfoods, and he does a lot of interviews with people, and he's just an overall great guy, and he's back from lots of travel. So let me bring Mr. Ken. Thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure, Justin. It's always good to be here.
Yeah. So you were telling me before the show that you just got back from Bosnia, but you did a bunch of health talks and lectures on the East Coast. But prior to that, you just got back from Bosnia studying pyramids and things?
I went to Bosnia last June because Dr. Samir Osmanagic, the archaeologist who discovered the largest pyramids so far in the world in Bosnia, has had me come there and speak. And he wanted me to come back and not only speak to the public about the phenomenon observed with the Bosnian pyramids, because people are going, they have tunnels inside of them, and people are going inside and getting healed of major disease. And so he wanted me to lecture about how pyramids work and pyramid energy to the public, but also he assembled a really amazing team of engineers and scientists from all around the world to come and study them and take measurements and quantify what was going on with them. And so we had Russian pyramid scientist Valery Uvarov, Dr. Konstantin Korotkov from Russia, who's an eminent scientist and academic in Russia, and a bunch of other engineers and scientists together measuring these things and quantifying what was really going on, and then brainstorming and presenting to each other so that we could what's going on there. So I was doing that last June, and I had met a group of about 70 French people at a previous talk that I did there, and so one of them was the host of a large conference in Toulouse, France. So he invited me to come and speak in France. So I did that a few weeks ago, and then went on to Spain. And then just this week, I was in New York and Boston and New Jersey doing some talks up there. So I've been getting around a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, so much to get to about, your travel hacks and how you beat the travel bug and the jet lag, which sounds interesting to me. But because I'm always interested in how people are traveling and what they're doing to mitigate jet lag and things. But with regards to the Bosnian pyramids, I just tried to show some on the screen here while you were talking. But these things are relatively new in terms of their discovery. Is that right?
Yeah, Samir discovered them in 2006, and they were so big that people thought they were just mountains because they were covered with dirt and trees. And upon excavation, they've discovered 4 feet of soil on top of them, and then grass and trees growing. And so at first, nobody believed they were pyramids because their construction is not like other pyramids around the world that use monolithic stone to create the pyramid. They actually are built more like orgonite, where they have a substrate of clay with river rock layered in very specific ways and constructed in certain ways to generate scalar waves. And for anybody who's not familiar with how to generate scalar waves, when mainstream archaeologists come and look at it, they just go, oh, this is just a natural formation, even though there are no other mountains anywhere around constructed like that, number one. Number
Mm,
two, there's half of a mountain gone that was made out of clay where they mined the clay to build this one. And there's millions of cubic feet uh, of river rock that have been excavated from various places along these rivers. So
wow.
there's an obvious excavation site, and then these pyramids. There's a whole complex of them, and of course they're all laid out geometrically very precisely, and they also each structure. There's pyramids and cones and spheres, and they have very exacting dimensions and angles and construction. So initially, when he first started uncovering this, nobody believed him, and the mainstream archaeological professional societies actually opposed him and ridiculed him, and still do. But as he's excavated more and more proof that and hard science showing that these things are definitely pyramids, they generate energy, they're not like other mountains in the area, even ones that look like pyramids, and people are getting healed of major diseases by going inside of them. So they're quantifying all of this stuff, and they've excavated so much stuff. It's obviously not naturally made. There's sidewalks and monolithic slabs of concrete that are interlocked very precisely,
Yeah.
and they found runes with writing inside, and stuff, organic material deep inside of them that would not be there, that they've carbon dated, and lots of evidence.
Yeah, it's
So
fascinating. I was looking at some of the pictures as you were talking, and I'm not sure if you were able to see those on your screen, but it looks like first of all, when you're watching online, if you're watching on the YouTube version right now or the Facebook version of this podcast, you can see that. Let me bring those up again. It looks like all of these pyramids are actually built and they're underneath like existing like forestry or something, and there's huge
right.
neighborhoods and so it's really fascinating how it looks like a whole forest has grown over these things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the case with all the pyramids around the world, pretty much. That have been, with the exception of maybe the Egyptian pyramids and a few others, most of them usually do have several feet of topsoil and grass and trees growing over them. And now they're using LIDAR, which is a ground penetrating radar that can see deep underground. And we've discovered that there are thousands of entire ancient cities underground all over the planet. And lots of them have these kinds of structures, these pyramids and things, and they just haven't been excavated yet. And so,
Wow.
increasingly as more of these are discovered, there's also been pyramid complexes discovered under the ocean as well.
Hmm.
One of them more recently off the coast of Cuba. There's an entire city on the floor of the ocean off of southwest Cuba that has tons of pyramids in the city, large ones. Um, and so, but it's actively being suppressed. Samir Osmanagic lectures about this, and I interviewed him. If you want to see the some of these structures that you're showing and more on YouTube, I interviewed him. So if you search on Ken Rolla, Samir O, you'll find the interview I did with him showing pictures of these various discoveries they've had. And as you just showed, they found these monolithic spheres that are perfect spheres made out of stone, 15 feet in diameter, that put out scalar waves, and lots of other structures, and then of course the pyramids themselves. So they're quantifying it all. But
So
he's
Ken,
actively had the professional society suppressing it.
so Ken, how do I spell his name? I'm going to search on YouTube right now
It's
for you.
okay. It's Semir, Semir, Osmanagic, Osmanagich, or just IC.
Oh, there we are. Okay.
Mhm. And he's a real modern day Indiana Jones. He's an amazing guy. He travels all over the world. He's documented hundreds, if not thousands, of pyramids all around the planet. He says there's pyramids on every continent on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not the only one saying that. Dr. Alexander Golod and Valery Uvarov, Russian pyramid scientists, are also saying the same thing. Other
Yeah,
people.
it's pretty fascinating. So I found the interview. Dr. Sam Osmagad. I forget. I don't even know how to say his name. Uh,
Osmanagic. I know it took me a year to get his name right. Osmanagic.
Osmanagic. Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Discusses pyramids around the world and Bosnian pyramid energy with Ken Rolla. Okay, we'll have to put that in the show notes. That's really cool. And it looks like an hour long. So these pyramids that you're finding around the world, and people and other people are finding too. I mean, there's been structures off the coast of China underneath the water, or somewhere in Japan, I think it was. I read something a while back that was interesting. It was talking about a pyramid near Cuba, and it might be the one that you're talking about. But it talked about how it was made out of crystal or something. Is that or glass or something?
I don't know about the ones under the ocean in off the coast of Cuba. They have crystals at their points.
Mm,
They're made out of
okay.
stone, but they have crystals at their points. And a lot of old pyramids used to have crystals at their points, but the crystals were removed.
So these cultures, it's weird because I spoke with someone a while back about she was an expert, and I think she did a documentary about the pyramids too, and she does a lot of work in this field. And she was saying, she was sort of guessing at one of the reasons why they could be here is to balance out when the Earth rotates. To balance out the crust of the Earth so that the spin is equal, and so it doesn't get top heavy and that kind of thing. And I don't know. Are there any good explanations that you've ever heard of with regards to the pyramids?
Well, most people that have studied them and measured the energies coming off of them, we're all just guessing at what they really are for, but there appear to be multiple purposes for them because they have a lot of benefits just in the local area. Like, Dr. Alexander Golod, he actually built pyramids, and he built a very large one outside of Moscow, about 144 feet tall. And because he was a high-ranking officer in the Russian military, he had a budget to do a lot of hard science on it with some very advanced technologies, a lot of top secret technologies. And so he measured a lot of interesting things, found that these pyramids can neutralize radioactivity for hundreds of miles around. They can neutralize poisons and radioactivity in the atmosphere and groundwater inside of themselves. People can go inside of them and get healed of major disease. Um, they make springs come to the surface because the scalar field that the pyramids put out pull on monoatomic minerals in groundwater and pull it up to the surface. So springs were popping up all over the place. One of the more interesting things I found that Golod discovered, a they noticed his large pyramid outside of Moscow was in these large fields, and they noticed these flowers growing in the fields that no one had ever seen before. So they called a botanist in to have them identified, and found out that the flowers have been extinct on Earth for 11 million years. And so Golod theorized that these pyramids somehow are able to tap into the energetic record of the cosmos, whatever you want to call it. Some people may call it the Akashic records. He called it the
Mm-hmm.
quantum field,
Mm-hmm.
but bring that pattern, that energetic pattern, back into physical being. And so they've had several instances around the world of pyramids bringing back extinct insects and flowers. And so that appears to be one of the effects. Scalar waves, that these things, basically what these things are antennas that capture scalar waves coming from the sun and from the cosmos and from the center of the earth.
Uh-huh.
And then they rebroadcast it in a local area. And they also send a vortex of scalar waves up through the tip. And that energy is what creates and alters matter. The whole physical universe that we're in is created out of this scalar wave energy that is superluminal light. It's light that's traveling way beyond what we've been told the normal speed of light is. And
Uh-huh.
it slows down and kind of coagulates into this physical reality that we're in. And it creates the whole electromagnetic spectrum of energy. And so it's able to alter and create matter. And that's why these pyramids are able to have these weird effects that they have.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. The more you look into what they do and the effects they have. So you're saying that they've actually been able to bring back extinct insects and things like that. Like what kind of insects
According
and
to like I think a wasp, but like an ancient wasp, and
uh-huh.
some flowers. Uh, Golod supposedly did that, documented that. I
Wow.
haven't seen that with like the Bosnian pyramids myself firsthand, but supposedly that's what Golod discovered. And
Yeah.
so
I,
that's why Samir very deftly is involving scientists to do hard science on this and document it so that it can't be denied by mainstream archaeology.
I think that I've often wondered this, and it's one of those things. I'm sure you're familiar with Ed Leeds Skalnin down there in South Florida, who built the Coral Castle, and fascinating guy. And I've been down there multiple times, checking it out and looking at it. And he claimed that he understood what the Egyptians did in order to lift these heavy stones. Because if you look at the physics of who that guy was, there's no conceivable way that he could have done what he did without some sort of help or some sort of technology that he was using. So what got me fascinated about that, 20 years ago when I learned about it, was that it seems to me that a guy like that, an immigrant from Latvia, I think, came to the United States and started building this place, or this place in southern Florida called the Coral Castle, and somehow he was able to tap into the information of how the Egyptians did this. And I have to think that if he was able to tap into that, so can we, right? Is that not
Well,
possible?
absolutely, and people are.
Yeah.
People are. Valery Uvarov, the Russian pyramid scientist, that's exactly what he's done, is studied the ancient Egyptian texts and built
Wow.
pyramids based on what what they stipulated, in these ancient texts. I also have a friend who's reverse engineered Egyptian technology by studying hieroglyphs, and he was able to build a scalar wave device that can alter the weather, among other things, and heal people. And then uh, there's an Egyptian archaeology professor. What's his name? Ibrahim Karim.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was studying Egyptian archaeology or architecture and hieroglyphs,
Uh-huh.
and realized that the hieroglyphs and architecture have sacred geometry built into them, and in particular, the alphabet and the hieroglyphs are little scalar wave antennas. All these little shapes of these hieroglyphs are little scalar wave antennas. So he started building scalar wave antennas that look like little hieroglyphs out of little pieces of metal, and he can tune them to any frequency he wants. And he told me, I was working with him on a project to help some guys in Canada that were um, they wanted to grow medical marijuana in pyramid-shaped greenhouses and use my
Oh,
scalar technology and his to
interesting.
enhance the growth, along with Ormus. And so we were working together a little bit, and he told me that he could make his little structures that could tune to all of the frequencies of the minerals that I use in my scalar devices, so that I won't need to use minerals. And so I want to work with him on that and develop that. So there are
Wow.
people using these kinds of ancient technologies, and particularly the military. Um, Tesla and other people, a lot of brilliant people have figured this stuff out and it's using a lot of the same principles the ancient people used,
Hmm.
and they're using it in the military extensively. You know, when I bump into government agents of various kinds and people in the military and scientists working in the alphabet agencies,
Yeah.
they know all about this stuff. Just
Wow.
yesterday, actually, I was talking to a Department of Defense, former Department of Defense engineer,
Wow.
and I was talking to him about, three different people that I know that have developed anti-gravity time traveling flying saucers, two of them for the U.S. military since the 50s. And and he was confirming. He's like, "Oh yeah, we've had that
Really?
a long time, and other stuff a lot more amazing than that." Yeah.
Jeez. Wow. But you couldn't share that here, or else you would have to be silenced in some way.
Well, that kind of information now is out pretty well because there are people, first of all, these secret space program whistleblowers and NASA whistleblowers and military whistleblowers who are talking
Uh-huh.
about this stuff. And then also, you've got some of the people involved in some of those programs that have come out, like Dr. Stephen Greer has gotten a bunch of military people that have,
Hmm.
verifiable credentials talking about this stuff and more,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
so that kind of thing is not won't really get you into trouble. It's giving detailed information on technologies that would counteract the existing control paradigm on the planet.
Yeah.
That's what will get you in trouble,
Don't want to do
like
that.
free
Don't.
energy.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah, and how to make it. If everyone had access to it, then that'd be a whole different ballgame.
right.
I remember
Which I
years.
will tell, I can tell one way of making free energy that people can do if they want to play with it, but um, and it's very simple. Just buy a Farberware hot plate, an inductive hot plate, which is the kind that gets the pan hot, but it doesn't get the hot plate hot itself.
Okay.
And you can build a Tesla pancake coil out of like speaker wire or just bell wire and lay it on the inductive hot plate and plug the thing in and turn it on all the way up, and it will induce a current out of the pancake coil 3 to 5 times of what's going into it. And so you can basically amplify electricity that way. So using that principle, you could, attach it to solar panels, and suddenly solar becomes very viable. Or you could
Right.
just lower your power bills to a third to a fifth of what they are now.
Wouldn't that be?
So
Wouldn't
that's
that be?
one way that people that you don't need a lot of tech skills, just basic mechanical skills. You play around with that, you can do those kinds of things.
My goodness, wouldn't that be fun to play around with? That would be
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's many ways of creating free energy.
Years ago, I remember when I was first sort of studying the pyramids, and it's interesting because whenever you get into this kind of alternative information, it's funny because I got into pyramids and ancient civilizations and ancient cultures, and that led me to health. And then you start realizing that just every aspect of life is sort of dominated by sort of what's mainstream and what's actually happening,
Right,
And so when I started studying the pyramids, it was just fascinating to me that you realize, at least with the Great Pyramid, I forget, I don't have my notes in front of me, but it was something like the Great Pyramid, where they quarried the stones, was something like 581 miles away. And then there's what, 2.3 million stones that make up the Great Pyramid. And then with a work crew, like they say, they would have had to actually cut, transport, and position one stone every, I think, like 6 minutes or something. And so, how anyone
right,
believes what they told us in school, it's just, and if that doesn't catapult you into this whole idea that you said, the massive human consciousness being manipulated, I mean, it's unbelievable to me what they feed us in school as
right,
opposed to what's actually true if you actually look into it.
right. Well, that's kind of how I got into being exposed to mind control, and particularly mass mind control, because coming out of engineering school, I believed what I was taught in school,
Hmm.
and I had no reason not to. And I was working in jobs that I was utilizing it, and it worked just fine. But then I started encountering technologies that completely defied what I was taught in school, and I had to start asking questions about, how this stuff was working and why it worked. And that kind of opened up, my mind to exploring alternative science, and then started bumping into people in the military, in the space programs, in government agencies that were working with very advanced technologies, and I got to see them and hear and see the kinds of things they were doing. I was back in the early 90s. I worked with a man named Yul Brown who developed water fueled technology that could not only power everything non-toxically, but it could also neutralize radioactivity and clean up Chernobyl and Fukushima very
Hmm.
quickly.
Yeah.
And and they're like, for example, there are 61 patents worldwide on record for methods for neutralizing radioactivity, 8 of them in Japan, and yet we're still taught that, oh, there's no solution for nuclear fallout and radioactivity and stuff. It's all
Right.
nonsense. So over time, as I was getting exposed to this science that defied my education, I started questioning what I was taught, and then I met, um, oh gosh, Kathy O'Brien,
Oh, okay.
who had she was a trauma-based mind control subject, a government mind control subject, and she had been through very extensive trauma-based mind control programming and broke it with the help of a CIA agent who fell in love with her. And so they exposed what was going on with trauma-based mind control in the government to Congress. They actually testified before Congress.
I'm going to bring up a picture of her on the show here. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, she's got a
Yeah.
great book called Transformation of America, and that's spelled Trance, Formation of America. And she still lectures about it. But I met her, I lived in North Carolina, I met her at a conference, and I didn't want to believe what she had to say because basically what she was saying is that we're all mind controlled, and she explained the mechanisms of it. And for a long time, I was really in shock because I didn't want to live in a world where that kind of stuff was going on, particularly the horrific type of mind control she was exposed to with torture and drugging and electroshock and all kinds of stuff. And so, but then I also met Bryce Taylor and read her book. She wrote a book called Thanks for the Memories, The Truth Has Set Me Free. Her real name, by the way, is Susan Ford. Bryce Taylor is, that's Brice. That's a pseudonym. And
Oh, okay.
so, but
Yeah.
hearing the details of these people's ordeals and then seeing the specifics of what they talked about, that was what first opened me up to this idea of trauma-based mind control. And then, studying the history of it, it's been used, persuading the mass consciousness is nothing new. I think most people don't find it a stretch to believe that public opinion has been swayed throughout the human history in
Mm-hmm.
various ways,
Yeah.
but it's gotten much more sophisticated, particularly since World War II, because the Nazis were working on a lot of very sophisticated mind control technologies and techniques,
Mm-hmm.
and individual and mass mind control. And so when World War II ended, the United States, Great Britain, and Russia rushed into Germany to steal the spoils of war,
Right.
and we got a lot of their mind scientists. And so and that now there's other information coming out that of course we also got German rocket scientists and a whole
Mm-hmm.
cadre of Nazi scientists were had their dossiers whitewashed and were incorporated into our military industrial complex, and that influence now has been very heavy in our society. It's filtered through the military into society and into the medical system, et cetera, et cetera. And so what's occurred now is that there has been definite intentional trauma-based mind control being exposed to the public now for many decades, since the 50s and 60s at least.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just gotten more and more ridiculous because the powers that be are kind of losing their grip in a lot of ways. And so they're getting more desperate with the amount of trauma and drama. But
Yeah.
so anyway, and we can discuss how it works, but that's kind of what's been going on.
Yeah, I often wonder, do people still watch the news and still think that what they're being told on the news is actually real, in 2018? But then you go by, like we'll walk, our dogs and our little babies around our neighborhood, and we'll look into people's homes, and they got that blue light, and the TV going, and they got the news, Fox News, CNN, and it's I don't know, that quote I quote it a lot, and I don't know who said it, but it says, "In the age of information, ignorance is just a choice." And
Right.
right, who said that? But it's so true. I guess people just don't have time to look into things. It's very bizarre.
Well, it's not that, it's that people want to feel safe and secure. And,
Mm-hmm.
most people are not they're not expansive and they're not pioneering in consciousness. They just want to be left the hell alone and have a simple life and be in
Yeah.
comfort, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And most people, I mean, this is a human part of the human condition, is that we all have this psychological thermostat that psychologists call a psychocybernetic mechanism, and it's basically what keeps us in our comfort zone. Most people, I mean, everybody wants to be in their comfort zone. And so we tend to do the things and repeat the things that keep us in that comfort zone. And it's not pleasant to step too far out of that comfort zone. And so that mechanism is what keeps most people happy and comfortable with the status quo as long as it doesn't make them uncomfortable. Nowadays though, what's happening is that with the way things are changing on the planet, hanging on to the old paradigm is actually uncomfortable. It's becoming increasingly uncomfortable because if you're trying to hang on to, for example, the medical paradigm for all of
Hmm.
your health needs, or eating GMO food and eating fast food and those kinds of things, you're going to be sick, you're going to be feeling bad, you're going to be unhealthy, you're not going to have energy, you're going to be depressed. And in fact, that's reflected in, statistics like the fact that 70% of Americans are on at least one pharmaceutical and most of them are on antidepressants.
Hmm.
So these choices, you're absolutely right. It is a choice. And generally, in my experience, people don't change until the pain has reached a high enough level that it kind of forces them to.
Yeah.
And we're all like that. I'm not being holier than thou. I'm the same way. It's like every
Yeah.
now and then I kind of have to kick myself in the butt and go, okay, time to change, time to
Yeah.
shift and move and grow.
Yeah.
Um, but that's part of the reason why it's being presented to people. It's an easy choice. It's right in front of them. Here you go. It's all around you. And then you have manipulation of the education system. You have manipulation of, for example, scientific journals. This is something I noticed probably 30 years ago. I would bump it like in the 80s when I was in college in the early 80s.
Uh-huh.
The big thing in the news in engineering was that these two professors at the University of Utah, Pons and Fleischmann, had discovered cold fusion.
Okay.
And they were vilified by the scientific community. And people claimed that they couldn't reproduce the results, although it wasn't true, and the results were duplicated. And now, in fact, after they got railroaded and run out of the country and discussed, um, their cold fusion has been proven correct. But now they don't call it cold fusion, they call it low energy nuclear resonance.
Oh.
Same name, different
Yeah.
name for the
Same
same
thing,
thing.
right?
So,
Yeah.
but what I found interesting was I was watching the scientific journals, the trade journals, and seeing this technology being presented and all the findings. It was really amazing. And then suddenly it disappears.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what happens in academia and in science is that if you have a technology that threatens the status quo or it has military applications or applications in space, then it will get sequestered by the government and it will get classified so that nobody knows it exists.
Yeah.
And then in some cases, you will be offered to develop the technology for these agencies, or in some cases, they'll just take your stuff and go do it themselves.
Yeah.
I met
Or yeah.
an NSA scientist last year who was actually working for the NSA against his will because they tried to kill him 3 times when he
Wow.
refused to work for them. And so
Oh my.
ultimately, he had to capitulate and work for them, even though he didn't want to.
Wow.
So just science alone is very controlled in this way, but
Uh-huh.
not just science. It's every field of endeavor, whether it's philosophy or art or communications or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's all of it. I
Religion.
worked in the medical system. Yeah, oh, definitely
Yeah,
religion.
religion. Got to put that one in
Um,
there.
yeah, they've been very manipulated, and I think a lot of religious people understand that as well.
Yeah.
Um, I've been very surprised in my travels how people are waking up.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, certainly there's a lot of people still asleep, but I mean I've got a couple of neighbors who are very kind, little old country folks in their 70s. They're very unsophisticated, and the man was a retired truck driver, and I'm out, at the edge of the yard talking to these folks, and I just talk to them about the weather and just
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 whatever.
small talk.
Yeah.
And out of the blue, this guy says, "You know what? I think extraterrestrials are in control of our government."
He
And
said
I'm
that to
like,
you.
"Yeah." And I'm like, "Where did you hear
Yeah.
that?" Because I've
Yeah.
had my own encounters, with all kinds of bizarre stuff. But it's like,
Yeah.
and I never said anything to him about that, and he doesn't watch me online. And he
Yeah.
said, "Oh, I saw it on the Discovery Channel, and I think it's true." I was like,
Wow.
"Wow."
And he's in his
So people are
70s.
waking up.
This guy's in his
He's in his
70s.
70s. He's a good old country boy.
Wow.
I would have never thought in a million years.
Isn't
But
that?
this is what I'm encountering now when I travel. It used to be when I would travel and talk about some of these more esoteric subjects, a lot of people, particularly scientists and engineers, would scoff at it and didn't believe it.
Hmm.
But now I've got physicists and engineers working for universities and governments and military, all kinds of folks coming up to me at my talks and saying, you know, I've got colleagues who verified what you're saying. And so people are waking up. But what I like to say is that if everybody woke up at the same time, there wouldn't be enough sprouts to go around. So we got to do it in shifts.
Yeah, there you go.
Um,
That's so true.
but anybody who's watching your show is going to be pretty switched on because you've got some
Yeah.
amazing guests. I've been watching. You've got some amazing guests.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because we just got an email from a former guest. I probably shouldn't say who it is on the air, but he was recently contacted by the FDA, and we just got an email from him yesterday. I think he was on, well, I won't even say who it is, but he was on recently, and the FDA has contacted him now saying that claims were made on the interview that we did with him, and he was asking
Wow.
me if we could pull it down and then they could edit out whatever snippets where he allegedly made claims, and then put it back online, which we're happy to do that. But it's interesting too because you're looking at like the tightness of control that happens in the government and in their language even. And what's sort of concerning to me, Ken, and I'm sure you've thought about this, is that is it possible for them to retroactively sort of grandfather clause the use of language and using words in a specific way? So let's say today they make illegal the word wellness, for example. Could they go back and look at all of the shows that we've done or with other people who have done podcasts and talk about the word wellness and go back and retroactively go after someone for the use of that word, even though they used that word before the law was enacted? And it sounds to me that's kind of maybe the direction they're going. I don't know. It's just
Well, the thing that
crazy.
I've found is that these alphabet agencies will act illegally, and if you don't have the money to defend against them, then by de facto, they can do whatever they want. That's been
Mm-hmm.
my experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even had friends, for example, when we worked with Free Energy, who were murdered, and they don't leave a calling card and say, "Hi, we're X number, we're so and so." Agency or whatever, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's corporate, sometimes it's government. Um, but most definitely, if you don't have the knowledge and the money to defend yourself, and a lot of times even if you do, these
Doesn't matter.
agencies, it really, yeah, it depends on what they want to do.
Yeah. It's really fascinating too that there seems to be a correlation between, and at least for me, nutrition and someone's ability and desire to want to take care of themselves and they have that self-worth. Because everyone I talk to, before the air, before we go on the live on the air, they'll tell me things, and maybe they're expert in detoxification or something, and you would never think that they're into the kind of stuff that we're talking about today. But they'll tell me things like that, and I know that sort of secretly or privately, or at least in a non-public venue, they're open and awake to things. And then we go on the show and we talk about detoxification, which is great, and I think helps to open up your mind to be able to receive some of this information. But it's fascinating that so many people that are into health are also incredibly open-minded. There's an interesting connection there, isn't there? I wonder why that is.
Well, yeah, it's true because, well, usually if you're exploring the truth, you're going to be bumping into all kinds of truth, and because it's out there. I mean,
That's
these
true.
days with the great Oracle Google, all you've got to do is a few magic hand motions with,
Yeah,
your mouse and your keyboard, and you can find all kinds of amazing things. And
yeah.
there are, I found with, for example, YouTube, there are a lot of people exposing the truth on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is having a huge impact on people. For example, when I was in France, I expected the French people to be somewhat, you know, not rude, but not warmed up to Americans because, I mean, I've been embarrassed of our politics at least since 1980. And when I travel
Yeah.
overseas, so it doesn't bother me if people are rude, but actually, normally people are very nice. And the French people were incredibly nice, and it surprised me.
Yeah.
And just in general, total strangers just went out of their way to be nice to me. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the internet because these
Uh-huh.
people everywhere are able to see real Americans, real French people, real whoever, all over the planet, talking about life and what's going on there. There, for example, two of my favorite channels on YouTube are Different Russia and Real Russia, and there's just a couple of Russian people that walk around filming daily life and showing you what it's really like to live in Russia, and I
Wow.
love that stuff. So we're able to bypass the lies and the intermediary media that are, in the past have been spinning these lies to us, to fear other people and to hate them and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And
it's
so,
it's really fascinating because even if you think about movies like, remember Rocky in the '80s, where he fought Ivan Drago in Russia, and there was
yeah,
this big
exactly.
mystery, right, of like who's this Russian crazy guy, and there was all this like barrier between us and other people, and even I like to go out surfing a lot, and back in the '80s, I used to read Surfer magazine, and there would be this big sort of dissension between the Australians versus the Americans, and all of that. But now it's like, because of the internet, everyone's connected and everyone is realizing that, hey, all these stereotypes, like, I mean, you travel. I mean, I've
Yeah,
traveled around the world, and I see this, it's slowly dissolving because I think the internet, it's amazing.
yeah. And that's one of the
Hmm.
things I love about the young generation. Millennial bashing has become fashionable, particularly with older generation, and it's just more
Hmm.
divide and conquer. It's more of the mind control.
Right.
But the thing I love, the millennial, so-called millennial generation, is going to be the ones that save this planet. There's
Uh-huh.
some brilliant, brilliant young people, and they're not plugging into TV. They're not interested in the old crap that their parents were interested
Yeah,
in, which is wonderful.
I
Because
know.
my generation, we grew up with three or four TV channels, and that was it, and we were plugged into it all the time
Yeah.
and believing it. At least a lot of us were.
Yeah.
So now young people have access to all this information. They don't sit and watch, uh, you know, a lot of these stupid mainstream TV shows, and they're learning thanks to YouTube. A lot of young people are watching YouTube
Yeah.
and learning from it, and so it's cool to see.
It's really cool to see, and it's awesome to be a part of this generation, and to be a part and seeing, watching what they're doing and seeing, and slowly but surely the grip is being loosened on everyone because of all this information. At the very least, if someone's watching, like, I remember you did a show recently, I forget who, and you were talking about how awesome it was to just go on YouTube and watch a guy that does like paragliding or something. Was that what it was?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's
who was that?
paramotoring, where you strap an airplane motor to your back and you have a parachute and you fly. His name, I forget his name. I could find him, but just
Yeah.
yeah, just look up paramotoring on YouTube and you'll see this guy.
And when you're saying that,
Eh,
I was listening to you talk about how cool that was, and it's just like a little 5 minute clip of entertainment. But at the very least, if someone else is watching that same guy, they're not watching CNN or they're not watching Fox,
right,
right? So at the very
right.
least, it's other information.
Yeah, and they're watching somebody who's actually doing something and living as opposed to sitting around being a couch potato,
Right.
or living on their phone.
Hmm.
Because when you see how much fun, I mean, this guy, he just goes out of his house, walks to the park next door, takes off and flies to McDonald's 15 miles away and lands in the parking lot of McDonald's and goes inside. And, not that I'm recommending McDonald's, but it's just hilarious. And then
Right.
he takes off and goes flying, eating his hamburgers in the sky. And, you know,
That's so great.
that's inspiring.
You wonder
So there's
what's possible, right? You watch that and you think, wow, like a
exactly.
little 10-year-old kid might think, what's possible? What could I do?
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
why to me, the biggest issue that we have on this planet, and we've got a lot of big ones, we've
Hmm.
got radioactivity and EMF and, war and all kinds of things, nuclear proliferation and on and on. But to me, the biggest problem that we have is mind control, the intentional mind controlling of the population on this planet, because when you understand the concept that we create our reality, that we consciously, or that we create our reality with our consciousness, and that consciousness is being intentionally manipulated to steer us in a direction that benefits the powers that be on this planet. And so, most people, the vast majority of people on this planet, are not consciously creating their reality. They're having it created for them by default.
Hmm.
And so, this is what you see with people buying into the TV or whatever, the whole paradigm that's not working anymore. And because it's not working, it's only the stubborn people that are really trying to hang on to it, the ones that are very stuck. but the more progressive ones and open-minded ones are changing en masse.
Mm-hmm.
And so the
Yeah.
old games aren't working anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I've been teaching about mind control for 25 years, because if you're not consciously creating your reality, then somebody else is creating it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that you break that programming that we've had since, birth, is through shutting off the media, disconnecting from it, meditating, getting out in nature, slowing down. And there are specific technologies you can use also that will reintegrate the brain hemisphere function. Because when you're exposed to trauma, this is one of the, and it's been utilized extensively ever since. When you expose somebody to trauma, large or small,
Mm-hmm.
their right and left brain hemisphere function will separate. And it's a safety mechanism of the mind, so that if you're exposed to a severe trauma, say like a car wreck or something, your mind shuts it off and compartmentalizes it and says, that wasn't me. That was so horrific. That wasn't me.
Right.
And so it keeps you from going insane, so to speak. And so when you traumatize somebody repeatedly and severely, particularly in the case of individual, like military style mind control, with drugs and electroshock and those kinds of things, then what you do is you fragment the mind repeatedly, and you wind up developing multiple compartments of the mind that are not aware of the other compartments. And then in severe cases of that, you get multiple personality syndrome. But with the mass consciousness, what happens is that when you expose somebody to a trauma, let's say like the shuttle crash, right, the shuttle
Oh yeah.
explosion,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
whether it was engineered or not, they take these events and then they splash them all over the media to put it in front of the mass consciousness, traumatize people, and then it separates right and left hemisphere function, and it opens you up to programming.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they slip in with the programming.
Yeah.
And so the programming is just pervasive throughout the internet, throughout the news, throughout the media. And so
Fascinating.
most people don't know how to get out of that. And then when their lives don't work and they're depressed and dysfunctional, then they get on pharmaceuticals, and it's just a downward spiral.
Yeah, it's a genius
So I've
system,
been
isn't it?
teaching how to get out of that. It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
It's a brilliant
It's
system. Yeah.
basically harvesting human beings for their consciousness,
Uh-huh.
and physically harvesting them, because we all, most of us on this planet work to make money, and then we trade that money for things that we want. But it gets into this monetary system that also feeds off of us through the interest system and the taxation system. And so our real physical energy that we're utilizing to create things is being harvested in this way by the people at the top of the power structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
And
just
so,
super, super fascinating. Hope you guys are
uh,
enjoying this show with Mr. Ken Rohla. If you guys want to check out his website, it is freshandalive.com. And he's a super, super cool guy. And speaking of what he was just talking about with regards to mind control, I have a sort of a little personal website that I do a little bit of blogging every now and then, and you can probably see it's justinstellman.com. But I put all of the documentaries that I watch when I sit in my sauna. I'll put all the different documentaries, and I'll put them all on one page of my website. So if you guys are interested, I watch some really, really good ones about mind control and sort of that disassociation that happens when human beings are exposed to massive amounts of trauma, especially over time. And so if you guys are interested in that, you can check those out if you're interested. I wanted to tell you, I learned something really cool today, actually last night, about aloe vera. And let me bring it up on the page here. Aloe vera. So I was listening to this Dr. Saul Pressman, I think his name was, and he was talking about there's really only one food that carries a biophotonic element of light in it, and that has a connection to the cancer process and how cancer is metabolized. And it was really interesting. He went into the Krebs cycle and all of this stuff, but he was talking primarily about ozone. But he was also saying that aloe vera is one of the only foods on the planet that actually has this biophotonic element of light in it, that gets released. It's really quite fascinating stuff. And so we like this Stockton Aloe One. I don't know if you guys have tried this yet, but it's an incredible product, and I really recommend it because it's just so great for digestion, and it's really great for. It's got over 75 different active compounds, aloe vera does, and it would be best to sort of grow it yourself and just eat it that way, blend it up in smoothies and stuff. I actually one time tried to eat it alone, and it's it's pretty gross when you do that. But this stuff is really really good, and they flash freeze it, so they just ship it to you frozen, and it's got minerals and enzymes, amino acids, and this weird substance. We did a whole show on it years ago called Ormus, and but really uniquely, it's got these long chain sugars called polysaccharides, and it's sort of known for having something called ace mannan, which is an immune stimulator, and it helps to induce macrophages to produce interferon, which is incredibly, gosh, I don't want to make a claim here, but there's that C word that helps your body become more healthy. I'll just say that by producing these interleukins and necrosis factor A, tumor necrosis factor A, and all these things. And so Stockton Aloe One, I mean, aloe vera is just an incredible superfood, great for digestion, antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial, antimicrobial. It's just really, really great stuff. So I highly recommend checking out Stockton Aloe One, and they'll send you some face cream, and it's got aloe vera in it too. It's really, really great. I love this stuff, and I think you guys will too. And the other product I wanted to tell you guys about was Symbiotica, and this is an algae-based DHA. There are people who really advocate the sea-based seafood DHA, but I'm really kind of becoming more and more concerned about seafood with regards to the changing pH of the water from acid rain. I don't know too much about that, but I've read some research saying that the oceans are now becoming more and more, the pH is changing. And so what's happening as a result of that, the immune systems of the fish and the different sea life is allowing parasites to grow in them because of the pH change in the actual water itself. And then recently I was learning about microplastics and things like that. And so this is really cool because it's developed by a couple of friends of ours, and we really love this stuff. It's actually got DHA, which helps to carry an electric charge in the body, and DHA is just it's incredible for doing that, and creating that DC electric current in your body so that your mitochondria can work properly. This is pure sort of mitochondrial food and a nervous system food, and big fan of it. And then they recently combined it with astaxanthin, which is incredibly protective of your entire nervous system, and it's one of the most powerful antioxidants. They say it's 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C or 800 times stronger than CoQ10. So astaxanthin is incredible substance, and when you combine it with DHA, it's pure mitochondrial food. So what they've done is allowed us to give you guys a 15% off discount. So if you enter the code EHR when you check out, you'll be able to check out and get 15% off your order. So I wanted to tell you guys about that. So really, really fascinating stuff. And, it's what they call, right livelihood, when you can stand behind products that you enjoy and will help people, and get to offer those as a way for people to sort of enhance their health and speed up the healing process. None of these things that we talk about on our show actually heal you. We have to make sure that we don't make any claims here. I'm saying this laughing tongue in cheek because, man, you cannot. Oh my gosh, you just can't make any claims at all. And let me bring Ken back on and ask him. Hey, Ken, have you had any issues with making claims when you talk? Because you have a whole array at your website, freshandalive.com, which I recommend people check out. And you have all kinds of different devices and appliances there as well. But have you run into any issues yourself being contacted by anybody saying you're making claims or anything?
Well, fortunately, not by regulating agencies. I do my best not to make claims, and
Mm-hmm.
but I have been contacted sometimes when I tell the truth about certain products. I've gotten lawyer letters
Really?
from unethical companies threatening to sue me because I tell the truth about their products. Um, but
Wow.
fortunately, not so far by any regulating agencies. But that is always a concern, and actually, um, I'm migrating my website to a membership site so that we can
Oh.
have a private conversation under contract with people in that way. The FDA and the FTC have no purview.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's like I don't want to say anything, make any claims anyway that are anything that's unsubstantiated. But there
Right.
are certain foods and supplements that have been documented to have certain effects, and
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes even citing the facts can get you into trouble. Um, Depends on how big of an impact you're having. It's like Dr. Joe, Joe Mercola. He's a friend and a neighbor of mine, and he gets sued regularly by the medical establishment and
Does he really?
corporations just because he's such an influence on people.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
and
were telling me before the show that he's doing some unique things to his property, and it's just a fascinating thing. Yeah, I guess it depends on how big your reach is and how much of an impact you're making, based on
yeah,
whether or not they go after you. I mean, it makes sense, but my goodness, crazy.
yeah. And sometimes they'll watch you for years before they attack. They'll accumulate evidence for years, and then once you get a certain size and have a certain influence, then they'll attack you. That
Hmm.
happens, but it's also kind of willy-nilly. I've met people that were just very small individuals, you know, and they've been attacked as well. So it's
Hmm.
kind of hit or miss.
Have you heard that show with Patrick, with the guy who, Daniel Smith? He just got out of prison for, I think he was in
Yes.
for 3 or 4 years with the MMS. And are you following that at all? And
Yeah.
whew,
Yeah. Well, Daniel was one of my suppliers of MMS years ago,
yeah,
and he was thrown in jail. I didn't hear Patrick's interview with him, but I know the situation because I was indirectly involved with him, and
yeah,
it was really a crime what happened to him.
yeah. We
But he
actually
was,
purchased our products from him, Project Green Life, when it was
yeah,
still around.
yeah,
Yeah,
we did too. We did
yeah,
too.
yeah.
And so, it's all that's part of the mind control and obfuscation is to, go and arrest people and make it look like they've done something wrong, and then um, spread disinformation. Because, for example, chlorine dioxide, which Daniel was selling, the FDA approved it over 40 years ago for human consumption,
Hmm.
in certain ways.
Yeah.
And it's used routinely in water purification and in restaurants for disinfecting meat and cutting boards and stuff like that. So by their own admission, it's, the human beings can consume it as long as it's done properly. And there have been studies done. Interestingly enough, other people, like in the veterinarian community, there have been some people that developed veterinarian products for healing disease and killing parasites and pathogens in animals that were denied by the FDA, even though they had clinical studies showing that it worked. And it's because they know that there's things like chlorine dioxide and cannabis and certain products that are such amazing products.
Hmm.
They don't want that competing with the drug industry.
Now, the question I'm sort of wondering about lately is with this newly sort of distribution of the internet and the way people are getting information now from so many different platforms and sources and things. Um, how do you think that their control is going to continue to be so strong? I guess if you think that they have so many more resources and they could employ trolls or whatever else to start, looking at different people and studying what they're doing. But do you think, like in 50 years, do you think that they're going to have as much control on the mass consciousness as they do now?
That's a really good question because if we don't have a fundamental shift on this planet in consciousness and these activities go away, then yeah, it's going to be an unbelievable tyranny. I
Uh
think it
huh.
will fall apart though because we've already got technologies like blockchain technology, although it's not a panacea because blockchain encryption algorithms were created and have let's say hooks that the NSA and agencies have into them. A lot of people think that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchain in general is going to save us because it will create a networking architecture and a method of communication and sending data that cannot be intercepted. But that's actually not the truth. It's
Uh
already
huh.
been shown that cryptocurrencies can be traced. As a matter of fact,
Really?
if you look at oh yeah, if you look at the
Hmm.
architecture of Bitcoin, for example, versus Ethereum,
Mm-hmm.
the founder of Ethereum said that he's not using the hashing algorithm and some of the encryption that Bitcoin uses because the NSA created them. And
Oh,
Bitcoin is being heavily promoted as the cryptocurrency of choice through
right.
mainstream media and stuff,
Uh
which
huh.
that itself is a big red flag. It's like initially, oh, these cryptocurrencies are terrible because banks will lose control. But that's
Yeah.
all a facade because banks are investing billions of dollars and expected to be trillions of dollars into the technology in the coming years.
Uh huh.
And they're jumping on board. They wouldn't be jumping on board if it was really a threat to their existence.
Right.
Um, there are cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology that will be a threat and are a threat that are not using those encryption algorithms.
Interesting.
But even in the mainstream IT press, it's coming out that the hashing algorithm for Bitcoin, the NSA has their hooks into it, and also TLS encryption, which is encryption for anything secure online.
Wow.
That is also the NSA created that and it's got hooks into it.
That is
So
so crazy. That's
yeah,
so
so they're doing
nuts.
their best to control the paradigm, but it's like the internet, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it opens up the possibilities of spying, but it
Mm-hmm.
also is freeing people. So in the same way, I think that various technologies will come along that will enable us to break the paradigm. I mean, just this show, I mean, look at this show and all the information that you're putting out that
Mm.
people are listening to. That's shifting the mass consciousness big
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
And so there are lots and lots of people now that are able to do this.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm very optimistic. I think that the control paradigm is going to be falling apart within the next few years pretty significantly.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that, I watched some documentaries back a while ago about the Silk Road and the dark web and the connection between cryptocurrencies and these three things. And it's really quite fascinating. And the guy, I mean, people don't realize that, all of these things are controlled and manipulated and have to be sort of moderated to some degree, maybe by entities or governments that, aren't a part of it. And so, like the guy who created the Silk Road was merely creating, I think, an avenue in quote the dark web, which sounds really horrible. But the reason why it sounds so horrible is because allegedly he was creating an atmosphere for people to interact with each other privately using Bitcoin and different cryptocurrencies. So essentially, what they were sort of saying in the mainstream media was, people were using this to get prostitutes and get drugs and get all these illegal things. But in actuality, people were using it to get sort of, sometimes medication from, Canada that they can't get in the U.S. And that was taking away control from pharmaceuticals, and then all of a sudden this guy's in jail, and now he's been in jail for I don't know how many years. But I mean, you see this across every industry. I mean, it's just the theme of
Exactly.
this show, right? It's like everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's kind of like whack-a-mole. It's going to proliferate so much that they're not going to be able to keep jailing people and shutting people down.
Yeah.
But it's all of like the distribution and socialization of services, like things like Uber and Airbnb and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is really kind of de facto migration to what Jacques Fresco of the Venus Project called a
Hmm.
resource-based economy, where instead of each of us buying expensive technologies and vehicles and homes and things, we can share these resources. You
Hmm.
spend $40,000 on a car or whatever, and then it sits in your driveway 90% of the time, or
Yeah.
sits somewhere 90% of the time. Why not have these things shared and being used? And so these systems really out of necessity are being created by the younger generations who do not have the wealth that the previous generations had, and they kind of need to do this.
Uh-huh.
And so to me, that's the brilliance of the younger generation, is that they're the ones that are kind of de facto creating these technologies that are leading to a resource-based economy. Same thing with blockchain technology. There are people involved in those technologies that understand the government's hooks into these encryption algorithms and things, and so they're creating their own and they're avoiding the use of them. So you'll see, just like you see now with the internet, this parting of the ways, so to speak, where some people will be using this stuff securely for freeing and empowering themselves, and while the existing um, power structures try to maintain their control through them.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, just the other day we were driving up in LA, and we saw a guy that was he was riding around on one of those electric scooters, and he just stopped it and parked it. And I guess there's a way to lock it, and he put his cell phone up to it or something, and so allegedly that might lock it so that no one else can use it. And he was probably just a regular worker that was taking a lunch break and at the building, a few buildings down, and so it's this this idea of being able to share, resources like, Jacques Fresco, talked about when he was alive, is this resource-based economy. And, something really kind of creepy that was Kate and I were talking about the other day, which is very strange, is this idea of, I'm sure you're familiar with a website that was called Clout, and it was Klout. and
Hmm.
they're no longer really viable anymore. But I hear they're doing things like this in China, where they're actually giving people like social scores. So they're rating people on whether or not, like, let's say you pick up a piece of trash on your way to work, or let's say you allow someone to give, take your car, parking spot or something, and you develop these points that can be turned into currency. And it's really fascinating, but also really creepy, right? You could
Absolutely.
see how that would be manipulated.
Oh yeah, and abusive and
Yeah.
incorrect too. I mean, this is
Yeah.
one of the things that artificial intelligence experts warn against, that how many times AI gets things wrong, and the people that create the AI don't even know it unless they happen to put tracer code in to follow what's going on. Yeah, absolutely. My wife is Chinese from Taiwan, and so she's got relatives in China, and we watch what's going on there. And that's how it could be everywhere if for the people that are buying into not just social media, but the Internet of Things, for example. This is another way that the mind control is going to be taken to a whole new level, where uh, you've got all these different appliances in your house, from your not just your smart TV and your refrigerator spying on you, but your toaster and even your toothbrush. They actually have
Jeez.
Wi-Fi enabled electric toothbrushes now that can
What?
create a 3D map of your mouth and send it to your dentist or God knows whoever else.
Oh my
So
goodness.
this is where, this is what I've been teaching about more recently, is for people to be aware of the invasiveness of the Internet of Things and not buy into it. It makes life incredibly convenient because, for example, you can have a smart fridge that, you can be at the grocery store and get on your cell phone and see what's in your fridge, and it can even report to you, what you're out of and that kind of stuff, or have cameras inside your fridge. And it can have a computer console on the door of the fridge that can act as like a central organization point for your family members, or communication, all kinds of stuff. I mean, a lot of conveniences, but also a lot of surveillance, massive, massive surveillance that can follow your every move. And so, yeah, and then you get a social score, and then you go take your cell phone and go shopping in a cashierless store with cameras and everything everywhere and scanning all of your stuff, et cetera, RFID, et cetera. So yeah, if you become a problem for anybody, or let's say somebody screws up your data and you get blacklisted, or your social score isn't high enough, you're screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
It's
Yeah,
the old.
and who determines how many points someone should get for picking up a piece of trash, or even if
Exactly.
picking up a piece of trash is actually good or bad? Like, who determines all this
Yeah.
information?
Yeah. And of course it'll go far beyond that. It's basically, the better slave you are, the better your social score will be.
Uh-huh.
If you're online speaking truth and people don't like it and they dislike it, or you're
Mhm.
doing videos on YouTube or interviews like this and people don't like it, then that's going to show up in your social score.
That's a bad
And
score,
it
yeah.
sounds beyond Orwellian, but it's going to happen in the United States if people don't wise up.
Mhm. And when my wife and I were talking about this, she said, "Why don't people just pick up a piece of trash or help someone across the street or give up their parking space just because they're good people? Why do I need to earn
Right.
points for a social score? It's like crazy."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's my philosophy. It always has been. Because when you believe this concept that you create your reality, then what you put out comes back to you.
Mhm.
And so I just find that in my entire life, people don't act and react and respond to me the way that they do with other people, because I don't act and react with them the way that most people do.
Mhm.
When somebody is unkind to me in public for no reason, I don't react to it because I go, well, I haven't I haven't done anything to upset this person or draw this reaction, and so
Mhm.
therefore what's really going on. And for me, it's easy to see. I mean, I've worked enough with people and done enough healing work that I can see the pain in people. I can see it in their anatomy. I can hear it in their voice. I
Mm.
can tell what's going on with them, and I'm pretty
Mhm.
good at reading people. But yeah, it's like, why, and why do it for some ulterior motive, or for a religious reason? This is another thing. A lot of people think that, oh,
Yeah.
well, you've got to do this to be a good Christian or whatever. Well, no, you don't. You can just be a good person and do it anyway. You don't have to have a particular belief system other than, loving your fellow man and loving yourself.
Yeah, because I figure if God says to you that you need to love man and love yourself, and if you're doing it because God told you, then what's the point of just the action instead of having an actual love for someone else and doing it because you actually love them, you know?
Right, right, exactly. If you're doing it because somebody else wants you to, then there's an element of a fear involved because
Mm.
it's, you know, more of like, well, if I'm going to do it because they say so, why am I doing it because they say so? Is it because I'm afraid of a penalty, or
Yeah.
what's the motivation there?
What do you think is the role of taking care of your health and how that all plays into developing and keeping an open mind and looking into things? And in my life, I know that when I started really taking in more superfoods and juicing and getting those minerals and eating organic and getting off of the standard American diet, I know for me, it felt like my mind opened up and I kept looking into things more. And it was really weird. The more I kept looking into things, the more I'd run into people and circumstances and information that would present themselves to me, kind of like how you are, where, good things happen to you when you put good stuff out. And as I continue to go down the rabbit trail in every aspect of life, not just with health, with ancient civilizations and philosophy and culture and everything else, you start really opening and expanding your mind. And for me, it started with nutrition and taking care of myself and getting off the bad food. Where do you think that stands, nutrition and detoxification, with regards to allowing more information in that you may not have never even thought that you would consider?
Well, when you eat the way a living mammal is designed to eat, meaning predominantly uncooked food for one thing, and getting the nutrients that you're supposed to get
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to eating deficient food, then all of that plugs into the body and it makes everything work optimally. It makes the brain function optimally, it makes the pineal gland function optimally, and your pineal gland is the interface between physical reality and non-physical reality with the mind. It's one of the interfaces. And so simply by eating and operating the way that we're designed to eat, that will increase your level of health and awareness and empathy. And also, it makes it easier to see through the lies and the mind control. This is one of the big problems I see with people these days. They're so irradiated by their cell phones and nuclear fallout and toxins in their environment, their water, and their food, and they're blasting their brains with their cell phones all the time and being exposed to all these stressors and then being so deficient that they don't have energy, number one, and they also don't have discernment. They can't tell shit from shinola because
Mm-hmm.
they can't discern between a truth and a lie, and they don't know how to investigate, and so and to form logical conclusions. And so this is why, and a lot of times what people will do is they'll just shut down, and instead of trying to figure out what's going on, they'll just say, oh, everything's a conspiracy or everything's a lie, or and that's not the case. So this is one of the things I've been teaching people is how to detox their bodies, do emotional healing work, reprogram the unconscious mind to clear old programming that doesn't work for you so that you are happy and healthy and you can discern what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's easy. I mean, there's like telltale signs. When you look at things from a vibrational standpoint, there are telltale signs that come with a higher level of consciousness. So, for example, if somebody's asking me if a particular supplement is good or not, the initial thing I can do is look at who's making it and what are they saying about it. That tells
Mm-hmm.
me a lot about the level of consciousness of who's making it. And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, good old-fashioned lab tests. And I like doing in vivo tests,
Mm-hmm.
but this is part of the problem. Nutrition is a huge part of breaking the mind control. Cannabis, for example, hemp, industrialized hemp, which medical marijuana without the THC is now being sold as hemp oils or hemp paste or whatever. These also have been shown to break the programming. It opens up the mind and the pineal gland, and
Mm-hmm.
also it's a heal all. These things are amazing what they can do. And so that starts opening up the mind and breaking the programming. And then there are therapies that you can do, like Vipassana meditation or landmark education, things that will reintegrate right and left brain hemisphere function. When you do that, that releases the memory
Oh,
of trauma, and then that breaks the programming as well.
I
And
see.
so,
That makes a lot of
we
sense.
all have.
especially with the disassociation we were talking about before, when you can reconnect the right and left sides. That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
You can use things, there are technologies as simple as there are these little balls that you can hold in your hands that vibrate, and they alternate back and forth, vibrating from one hand to the other, and you can tune the frequency that they vibrate to what feels good. And you just
Oh,
holding onto these balls and having these alternating vibrations in your hands, that will stimulate right and left hemisphere function in the brain. It will reintegrate them. And holosync and hemisync, these
all
binaural beat
right.
programs that you listen to, same thing. They reintegrate right and left brain hemisphere function that releases the memory of trauma, and then you just start feeling good for no particular reason, like Forrest Gump.
Like Forrest Gump. I love, I love that Forrest Gump. Good reference. Yeah. So reorganizing and reconnecting the left and right side of the brain is really important. So that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I haven't really messed around with those holosync and some of those binaural beats, but you think they're pretty good?
I know they are. I've got them
Yeah.
and I use them. And my wife, I bought holosync years ago,
Mm-hmm.
like the initial program, because I heard about it, put it on the shelf, forgot about it. And then one day I was having a discussion with my wife about something, and normally that topic would have turned into an argument, and it
Uh huh.
didn't. And she
Interesting.
just like she just let it roll off her back, and I was like, "What's going on here?" I'm like, is somebody gonna like a ninja gonna jump in and kill me or something?
Right.
And and it turned out she had been listening to Holosync for a couple of weeks, and it had just like
Oh,
released all this trauma. So we all have these childhood issues. Even if you have an idyllic life growing up, you'll manufacture issues to have your own
yeah.
mountains to climb.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen people that came from very unconditionally loving families that, were idyllic, but they still wound up creating, they would interpret their youth and certain occurrences in their youth negatively, and then have a mountain to climb. And that's what we all do. We all create our own mountains to climb.
Yeah.
And some people, have real cliffhangers that are really tough to get over, and then other people have gradual inclines to go up. So I seek to make that incline very easy. Um, and you do that by releasing trauma from your life, particularly in the early years. Um, and so, the binaural beats is one way to do it. There's a technology called New Reality. The
Oh
website
yeah.
is newreality.com.
Uh
They
huh.
use a combination of binaural beats with visuals. You wear these special glasses that flash through your eyelids. You have your eyes closed, and that pulsing also will release memory of trauma. And then you can listen to audio programs while you're doing it that will program new information in. And so you can do things like learn a language very quickly or lose weight or whatever much faster than you would normally. So there are technologies that can do that. There's good old fashioned tried and true techniques like yoga, particularly Kriya Kundalini yoga, Ayurvedic methods, detoxification, like physical detoxification of the body actually can help. Rebirthing, breath work, as I mentioned, landmark education, Vipassana meditation. That's one of my favorites where you go and you do like a 10-day meditation sit. You take a vow of silence. You don't talk at all. And you totally go within and you just sit and observe the breath coming out of your nose and sensation on the surface of the body. Very, very simple, no dogma attached. But if you do that after 4 or 5 days, you will have an earth-shattering experience where you will transition and release trauma and see that the things that we worry about and the fears that we have really are unfounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, really interesting too, and I think that that's part of the mass consciousness mind control is this idea of getting a dopamine hit every time you get a new email, a new text, or anything like that. Which is why I don't have a cell phone, and I never have, and I don't plan on it. But it's getting increasingly more difficult to live in this culture without a cell phone. But when you
Yeah,
have all this stimulation that's happening so much, it becomes really challenging to sit down and do a meditation because it's like that's the last thing you want to do because you're constantly stimulated. I don't know if there's studies about this, but people's attention spans have to be going down and down and down, and when they go down,
oh yeah,
doing a meditation is one of the most beneficial things you could ever do, but also the most challenging if you're living in 2018.
exactly. Yeah, when you first go and do a meditation set like Vipassana, all they have you do is sit and get quiet and observe the breath coming out of your nostrils and just focus on that. Well, I'll
Wow.
guarantee you, most people can't focus more than 30 seconds before their mind wanders. Did I leave the stove on? Did I do? Oh,
Yeah.
and so you have to keep coming back and coming back, and it takes about 4 or 5 days of meditation, 12 hours a day, to get to the point where you can just stay in focus.
Wow.
And absolutely, this is a major problem in society now because of all these flitting screens and phones and all of this stuff and this overstimulation of people. That, yes, particularly younger generations, which people complain about, but it's not just the younger generations. I see it with all generations. People cannot focus. They can't hold a thought for very long,
Hmm.
and they can't think cogently and clearly. And it makes people much easier to control. And
Hmm.
so that is most definitely going on. And it's part and parcel of the mind control, and it's intentional.
And I wonder too, with regards to the medical industry, you know how like anytime you go see a doctor, it's always, you got to see an orthopedic surgeon, or now you have to see a foot doctor, or now you have to see, now there's special doctors for just chemotherapy and just radiation and every different part of the body. And I wonder if that's got to be some, whether or not it was engineered or if it's just a default state of the way it happened to play out. But this idea that we think that everything is disconnected is also kind of a philosophical way of, I think maybe, I don't even know how to explain it, but maybe just people's putting authority onto people who are perceived authorities, because there's a foot doctor versus a heart doctor versus an eye doctor, and when you separate everything out, it sounds really bizarre to go to a naturopathic doctor and realize everything is actually connected. It's
Exactly.
shocking.
Exactly. That's it. The medical system generally has not taken a holistic approach. And
Yeah.
so as technologies and techniques become more complex, it requires an increasing amount of specialization.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a lot of things on this planet, they're fundamentally flawed, like our production of energy. Our production of energy is fundamentally flawed in that all the energy production on Earth that we use mainstream is explosive force technology,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's nuclear or coal or oil or whatever. And so, because of that fundamental being explosive force technology always has toxic side effects.
Uh-huh.
So, it doesn't matter. As long as you're exploring the alternatives in explosive force technology, you're never going to get anywhere, and you're going to require increasingly levels of complexity to try and mask and cover up the side effects of the damage that the fundamentals do.
Okay.
So it's the same thing with things like the medical system or any of these industries. It's like a lot of them have been fundamentally steered away from sustainability, not necessarily because they don't want sustainability, but because it's not as profitable typically, or at least it's not perceived as profitable. Sometimes it's about controlling the paradigm. And so, my impression is with the medical system that it's evolved into a system that's so heavily controlled to maintain sickness and reduce population as part of the agenda. Um, the part of the agenda is simply profit, just to make money off of people, because the medical system doesn't get paid unless people are sick. If people get well, then they don't get paid. And so there's a lot of different factors that are going into it, and it's easy to oversimplify.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly fundamentally it's structured in a way that does not work, and it's not sustainable. It doesn't include holistic natural methods, and it should. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that you and I are having this conversation as non-medical doctors is a demonstration of the failings of the health and medical systems.
That's so true.
You know,
Yeah. And I wonder too if it just has some sort of tie into creativity, because if you think about the the way the medical system is set up and with regards to people's diseases, and obviously, like, we all know, all the people that are watching and listening right now know that the whole system is designed to turn a profit from our birth certificate on. I mean, everything is designed to turn a profit. So what is interesting to me is how come they haven't been able to get creative enough, like for example with cannabis. How come they haven't been able to get creative enough where they can figure out a way to legalize it but also profit off of it? And I know they're trying to do that, but it's not just cannabis, it's every kind of other alternative health modality out there. is it because they're older and they're stuck in an old paradigm, or are they young, and if they're young and able to be creative, it would have already been legalized? So is it a combination of both? And if it's that, then at some point will the people who are 20 years old now, or the future president of America, who never grew up without a cell phone in his hand, is that generation going to one day finally legalize these things and start integrating them into insurance policies? Or is the whole thing just going to break up, I wonder,
Well, it's not so much of a lack of creativity within these industries or systems, or even a profit motive. There's always the profit motive, but it's not just the profit motive that's controlling the dissemination of these empowering substances.
Uh-huh.
It's also the as I this title of this talk is the battle for human consciousness. The people that are in power on this planet understand that consciousness creates reality. They understand that acutely, and
Mm-hmm.
they do not want the masses to understand how powerful they are and what they can create. So part of the control of these substances is because they're consciousness expanding substances. Cannabis is an extremely mind expanding substance. It opens up the pineal gland, it expands awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been proven scientifically that people who consume cannabis regularly cannot be mind controlled. And so so it depends on your level of awareness within these systems as to what the reason is. When I worked in the medical system for 23 years, the people that I worked with, people from the patient level, in hospital emergency rooms, all the way up to the national policy level, working with politicians. And in general, they all believe that they are doing good because
Huh.
they're not aware of the bigger picture. They're not, most of the people involved in these systems are not. They're not bad people, and they don't have
Mm-hmm.
negative motives.
Mm-hmm.
They just are within a slavery system that they're not aware of. Sometimes they are aware of it. I mean, I have doctors and scientists that come to my talks, and they'll tell me, it's like, I would love to do all this stuff, but I'll get my license pulled if I use any of this stuff.
Wow. And they tell you that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's
Wow.
absolutely true. I mean, dentists risk their license just for removing mercury amalgam from people's mouths and stuff like that. So it
Jeez.
depends on what your level of awareness is within those systems. And everybody thinks that they're at the top of the food chain and that they know it all.
All right.
And they don't. I mean, it extends on how far do you want to go up the rabbit hole. I mean, it can extend all the way to extraterrestrial influences if you want
Uh-huh.
to go that far.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. How far do you want to go, right?
yeah, but it's not just about profit motive. It's about controlling the population and feeding off of the population and increasingly reducing population because as all of these systems have developed technologically and financially, the powers that be don't need as many of us on this planet to run things and feed the system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you're going to see with automation and robotics, you're going to see large masses of population that can fall into this quagmire of
Mm.
unemployment, depression, and things like that if we don't change the paradigm. And I think we will.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too with regards to the population. I often wonder, are those stats true? 7.5 billion people. I mean, I know that's what's sort of said out there. I've never really looked into it, but it's interesting because there has to be a delicate balance where there's enough people to be able, if you're thinking like they think, to be able to profit and control and all of that, but then not too many people where it becomes, if the cat gets out of the bag and there's a revolt or something, something could happen to them. So like you said, that's part of probably what that whole Bill Gates thing was about with the depopulation thing.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
depopulation equation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I mean, we've seen this for many, many years. Anybody who's halfway awake, that there have been all kinds of plans and schemes to monitor and control us more heavily, and most of them have not worked and have not
Mm-hmm.
come about. And it's because people are much more awake and aware than they're given credit for. And human beings are not as predictable as the powers that be would like to believe. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I do not see these negative scenarios of massive unemployment and that kind of stuff. What I see is there'll be a paradigm shift where lots and lots of people will simply opt out of the control systems and be
Mm.
creating new paradigms that are more free and more empowered. But the powers that be are not going to go down without a fight. So I mean, just look at, for example, like Airbnb and Uber and Turo, this new service where people can rent their own cars out as a rental car. All of those systems are being fought tooth and nail by the industries that they threaten, but they're not going to succeed because people are just going to opt out of those systems and choose these new systems, and that can't be stopped, especially when you've got new technologies coming out for private networking, like blockchain technology, et cetera.
Yeah. So in general, do you think the blockchain is a good direction, depending on whether or not it's actually being manipulated by the CIA and things? Do you think it's good?
It's like the current systems. Is the monetary system good? No, it's a
Yeah.
control system.
Yeah.
But can you be happy and have relatively high levels of freedom within it? Yes, if you understand how it works and you play the game.
Right.
And I think it's going to be the same thing with the blockchain and cryptocurrencies. It's a system that's designed to increase the slavery and increase the control and manipulation. For example, the way blockchain works is all of the transactions in the cryptocurrency space are in one, all of these computers across the network, across the globe, they each have the entire registry of all the transactions in the entire world on every computer. So if you've got the keys to the encryption algorithms, so even though that data is encrypted, you can go and it's one-stop shopping for all the transactions on the planet in one place, rather than having to search for all these distributed systems. So so in that sense, it's much more easy to spy and control people through the financial
Right.
system and the information communication systems.
Mm-hmm.
But there are smart people that understand this that are also creating new encryption algorithms and new technologies that will break that. So it's just like what you see now online. There are browsers that use proxies that allow you to surf anonymously and
Mm-hmm.
make it much more difficult to be tracked down. And so there are ways around it. But for the uninitiated and the ones that buy into these technologies like the Internet of Things, they're going to be slaves, and they're probably not going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that are aware will find the alternatives to get around it, just like they're already doing.
Yeah, I guess it's just kind of the age-old question of how do you use and integrate and incorporate this technology into your life? Are you the kind of person that looks all day long into their cell phone rather than giving someone a hug, or do you allow the cell phone to be part of what you do, but it's not anywhere near anything that controls your life? I mean, I was reading something recently where how amazing it would be for someone to be able to transfer $5 or $10 to their son or daughter that lives in Africa, or their son or daughter that lives in Europe, and you can do it without any fees, and it's instant. And so there's really cool things happening, I think.
Right. And that's the thing. I tell people I'm not a Luddite. I have a cell phone
Mm-hmm.
and I use it, but I don't use it for email or surfing the web or stuff like that. I've got lots of apps, and when I travel, I use it for things that I really need, like
Uh-huh.
finding a vegetarian restaurant or GPS or whatever. But I use it smartly. I use a maximum of 90 minutes a month on my cell phone.
Wow.
I have it in a fake name. I buy minutes with cash and load it up with minutes that are purchased with cash, so there's no tracing it to my credit cards. And I don't do activities that link it to other things, and so it's not spying on me. Now, of course, any phone. Here's the thing: it doesn't matter. With all of that said,
Yeah.
and I've got EMF protection on it, and that kind of stuff. I keep it away from my head. I use an air tube headset, those kinds of things. But
Mm-hmm.
even so, um, there's still it. All of these phones do voice recognition. They do fingerprint recognition. They do all sorts of recognition through the cameras and the microphones. So if somebody really wanted to find me through my phone, there are certain groups that could do that. But in general, particularly for marketing and that kind of stuff and the usual kinds of spying, they're not
Right.
going to find me. And people know, it's like I tell everybody, my friends, don't bother trying to call me on my cell phone or contact because I won't answer. You won't get me.
Good man.
I don't go
Yeah.
there. And same thing with social media. I got off of Facebook last March. I haven't regretted it. I absolutely love it.
Nice.
It's such a waste of time,
Right.
especially if you're in the public eye.
Yeah.
When, if you're using it to stay connected with real friends, that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But most people are using it in ways where they're addicted to it and they're using it too much. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of negativity and social engineering going on social media.
Mm.
And of course, they're sharing data with, you know, everybody. So it's a choice. It's a choice of what you buy into. I was very uplifted in France to see young people there out in public everywhere hardly use their cell phones. You hardly ever
Really?
see anybody in the prone
Wow.
position. Oh my God. You
Right?
just don't see that in France. It
That's
was
so
very
great.
refreshing, at least not in Toulouse where I was. Yeah.
Encouraging.
I mean,
So
thousands of people out in public
how
actually
did you get
talking to each other.
yeah, sharing biophotons and touching one another and having it looking into
Yeah.
someone's eyes. Imagine that.
Yeah.
How did you get your cell phone under a fake name?
Well, I got a no contract phone, and I just when they asked for my account information, I just created an account and a fake name, and then I
Wow.
used minutes to load it up, that I bought with cash from a store,
That's so
and then
cool.
I don't do anything that links it to any other accounts.
Yeah.
It's like Google GPS. I don't turn on all the little conveniences that link it to spying on other things.
Geolocation and
Um,
stuff and yeah.
yeah, well, even when you turn off geolocation, it's still tracking your location.
Oh, is that
But I'll
right?
do things like, yeah, so I'll put it, even when it's off, I put it in a Faraday cage. And when I have my phone at my house or my business, if I'm not using it, it's out in my car. And the reason is because I met an NSA scientist who told me, and actually he showed this in a public presentation, that cell phones have hardware in them that is scalar wave technology that will allow your phone to spy on you and record you, even if your phone is in a Faraday cage, which is a metal box that shields it from any outside electromagnetic uh, input.
Really?
Yeah. So I said to him, well, how the hell do you keep it from spying on you, And he said, well, put it out in your car when you're, not using it. So I do that.
Wow.
But I do keep it in a Faraday cage just for the usual, radio signal tracking and that kind of stuff to block it.
Might be a kind of good idea to put it in a Faraday cage, but also put like a box or something over it so that the sound, your conversations in another room couldn't go into it. Maybe.
Well, like I say, when I'm at any location, I don't have my cell phone with me. It's out of my vehicle. And when it's in my vehicle and I'm not using it, it's inside of a metal box. I have a little metal tin that it goes into, so it's being blocked.
Wow.
And I don't use it much. I just don't use it much.
Yeah, yeah. Once you get out of the habit of using it, it's pretty easy to just like Facebook. So with all of this that we sort of talked about, in my mind, one of the ways, or one of the main ways to get out of this matrix that we're sort of living in, or at least attempt to pull yourself out, is through self-care and actually valuing yourself enough to want to put in the work, to do the sauna sessions, or to do the coffee enemas, or to not take a shortcut and use filtered water when you're brushing your teeth, and just all the little things in our life. Do you think that's the case? And why do some people not want to take care of themselves, do you think?
Well, the reason, in my experience in actually testing people, the reason most people, and I include myself in this, the reason most people won't do certain things to maintain their own health is because everybody has an unconscious desire to die to a certain degree. Now, for some people, that when it becomes too much, that's when they actually do things like smoking and things that obviously are deadly.
Right.
So when I used to work with individual clients, the first thing I would always ask them, because usually it was people that had life-threatening illnesses, I'd say, "Do you want to live?" And it was amazing how most of the time they would hem and haw and go, yeah, I just want to live the next 4 years until my daughter gets out of college or something like that.
Really?
And yeah, and it's because of all the slings and arrows of life. It's because of traumas large and small over the course of a lifetime. It makes a piece of us not want to be here. And
Interesting.
so when that becomes too much, we will actually start self-sabotaging and self-destructing and creating our own death, usually slowly, because most people don't have the courage to kill themselves quickly.
Right. I know.
So that's why, people would come to me and they'd say, I'll do whatever it takes to get rid of this cancer or whatever, and then they wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that. So I always have, along with the physical detoxification and maintaining physical health, you've got to do trauma release. You've got to do emotional healing work and trauma release and release the cellular memory of trauma because it gets stored in cell receptor sites and chemicals called neuropeptides. It gets stored in the mind and in the brain chemistry. It gets stored in various places in the body and the DNA.
Uh-huh.
And so all that's got to be released. And so along with physical detoxification, doing things like binaural beats, holosync or hemisync, doing body work, breath
Mm.
work, yoga, particularly energetic types of yoga like Kriya Kundalini yoga,
Uh-huh.
Vipassana meditation, or other forms of meditation. All of that stuff releases trauma, reintegrates right and left brain hemisphere function. And then along with that, you've got to reprogram unconscious or conscious beliefs that do not serve you and they're holding you back. And so, these techniques I just mentioned also will do that. Um,
So what
and
about
when you
with
do that, then amazing things happen.
yeah, my goodness. I know because you're basically just clearing the slate, right? And allowing for your own programming, your own conscious programming to reprogram your subconscious instead of having it be a TV show like I used to watch when I was a kid, growing up on TV and MTV and all of that. Uh, so, with regards to reprogramming the subconscious mind, we had Bruce Lipton on the show years ago and Dr. Oh gosh, what's the name of the guy? Joseph, not
Oh,
DiMartini, Dispenza.
yeah, well, yeah, Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, DiMartini would probably be a good guy to get on as well. But with regards to reprogramming your subconscious mind, are there techniques like repetition is often mentioned? I like to do something where I've actually written out a bunch of affirmations in different areas of my life, and I recorded them into the computer, and then I turned the volume really low on that, and then I'll put that behind like some nice soft yoga music. Um, is all this stuff doing anything for me, and is this a good thing to do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Reprogramming the unconscious mind, especially, is kind of like exercise or learning an instrument. It's not
Okay.
something you just do a few times and it's done with. You have to change habits and unconscious beliefs. You do have to do repetition, much like learning an instrument or learning a language. So you've got to do, whether it's affirmations or meditation or release techniques or landmark education or whatever, it's repetition of that. Yeah. And over
Uh-huh.
time you change. It's like physical exercise. That's a huge one too. It changes brain chemistry.
Uh-huh.
And so getting out there and doing it. But yeah, it's the repetition. When was years ago, I was in a financial freedom program with John Assaraf, who was in the movie The Secret, and he was the creator of Remax Real Estate in Canada. He was almost a billionaire at the time.
Uh-huh.
And what I found interesting was the first 3 to 4 months of his program, which was on financial freedom, was meditation and reprogramming limiting and self-destructive unconscious beliefs because he understood if you don't change your deep-seated unconscious beliefs around money and self-worth and things like that, you'll never manifest what you want.
Yeah, it's so important to do that. My goodness. And for people to do it, obviously if they're I mean, imagine the power of someone doing that when they're not sick. They're just relatively healthy, going along, living a good life. As opposed to if you're sick, how important is that, to if you're dealing with a chronic degenerative disease to reprogram your subconscious mind? I mean, that's got to be at the top of the list, I think.
It is, and that's why I always say that in my mind control is the biggest issue we have on this planet because when you're not consciously creating your reality, then somebody else is doing it for you. And
Uh-huh.
that's going to be the folks in charge with the power and the money. And it's always going to be about profiting and feeding off of you and not maintaining your health and happiness.
Yeah.
And ultimately, even people that are like, I have friends who, for many years maintained the status quo in their lives and went along believing in the existing mainstream paradigm.
Hmm.
And they were relatively okay with that, not knowing how much better things could be.
Uh,
But eventually, it catches up with them. Eventually, they start having major health problems. Like suddenly, whoa, I got cancer and I'm dying from it, and the
yeah.
doctors tell me I've got 3 months to live or whatever. So you can't get away from the spiritual lessons that we have come here to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and part of that is growing. Ilya Prigogine, who was a Nobel Prize winning physicist, he's the guy who came up with the concept of chaos theory, and
Mm.
he wrote a book called Order Out of Chaos. It's a really good read. And what he discovered was that all living systems, what he called open systems, they have to go from equilibrium, step into chaos to grow. And then they grow and they reach a new higher level of organization and they stay at equilibrium for a while. But then in order to grow, they have to step into chaos again. And so life of any living organism is always cycles of equilibrium, stepping into chaos, reaching a higher level of existence, and then maintaining that for a while, and then stepping into chaos again and doing that over and over and over again. So when you understand that from a conscious viewpoint, that you're not going to be able to maintain this status quo for your entire life. You're always going to be growing, you're always going to be changing. So you might as well accept it and be proactive with it. And then when you do that, life becomes magical. When you, instead of forcing, having a disease force you to learn about health and nutrition or whatever, if you just do it on your own and maintain it progressively, then you never wind up having problems, and life becomes magical.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, when I was in Boston last week, I was visiting a lady who was 85 years old, and she didn't take care of herself until her 60s, and she wound up manifesting major disease, and she wound up going to Hippocrates Health Institute and learning about living foods lifestyle and
Yeah.
detoxification and all that. And now, man, this lady, I tell her, it's like, I want to be like you when I grow up, because she's vivacious and alive and very cogent and very brilliant, and she's teaching people, like she's just driven to help and teach people about this stuff. And she has, she makes all kinds of plans for the future. She's not sitting around going, oh,
Wow.
I'm 85 and it's time for me to go to nursing home, wherever. It's like, no. And we need more role models like that as we get older, to show people you don't have to go down the usual route of falling apart and sitting in a nursing home.
Yeah, so true. I mean, just the other day, I learned of a story of a 109-year-old barber, and he still works, and he still cuts hair. And on my computer, I have this program called, oh gosh, what's it called? Speed dial. I think it's called speed dial, and it allows you to sort of make and organize different websites and categorize your homepage so you can easily get to all the sites that you go to. And so I created a little tab called inspiring older people, and I put all of
Mm,
these people in there. And I just love what you're saying, because why do we have to die at 75 years old and decrepit?
right.
And it's possible to live long. I mean, this guy's doing it, and he probably never even, he's probably just got an incredible mitochondrial function and incredible level of health. But if he's doing it without even trying, what's possible for us? And that's why I think it's so cool as an older person to have goals and dreams and aspirations, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like my own mother, she's 86 years old and she's still going pretty strong,
Wow.
and she doesn't take care of herself at all.
Mm.
But she really wants to live. She loves life.
Wow.
And that's the biggest factor. It's like the mind can overcome a lot,
Yeah.
because it's been shown scientifically that, you know, consciousness is a form of scalar energy, and scalar energy can create an altered matter, and it does so within the body. This is how cells regenerate.
Uh-huh.
And so the desire to live trumps a lot of other stuff. That's the ultimate trump card that we have, is that consciousness creates reality. So when people say to me, "Why aren't you worried about this or that and the other?" It's like, no, I've done a lot of kind of empirical experiments of my own to
Uh-huh.
prove to myself that I do consciously create my reality. And so I stay focused on what I want to create. And even if the planet blows up in a ball of flames, I'll be on a flying saucer somewhere with some ETs partying.
Yeah, right?
I'm not, letting go of fear is the biggest thing in my experience that we can do to manifest the life of our dreams. It's simply just not acting out of fear,
Uh-huh.
because most people do in various
Yeah.
ways.
It's super encouraging that you talked about John Assaraf, and I watched that documentary with Anthony Robbins recently called "I'm Not Your Guru," and I see him out there in his cold plunge thing and his rebounder and his PEMF devices, and I used to love listening to a guy by the name of Jim Rohn, who has a course that
Mhm.
really changed my life called the Challenge to Succeed. To succeed, I could say that. And Bob Proctor is another one I really like, and it's really cool that these guys are now integrating health into their sort of success technology. And I think the people that are involved in natural health and alternative health are now understanding the spiritual, emotional side of reprogramming their subconscious mind. So it seems like these two worlds are kind of blending together.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and that's it. Tony Robbins does 5-day wheatgrass juice retreats.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
And so that's it. I mean, that's exactly it. People who are truly successful, and I don't measure that in terms of dollars, but in terms of happiness.
Yeah.
It's actually quite simple. The Dalai Lama, somebody asked him one time, what's the meaning of life? And he said, the meaning of life is to be happy. And it's like,
I love
that's
it.
the perfect answer. It's like
That's
all
it.
these things that we do, whether it's health or wealth or whatever, it's just about being happy. It's
Uh-huh.
about having certain feelings that we want to have.
Yeah.
And so, like people, I'll tell people sometimes there are times when I might work 80 to 100 hours in a week
Hmm.
for several weeks on end. And people are like, oh man, how do you do it? It's because number one, I take care of myself physically, I get
Yeah.
good sleep, and I love what I'm doing. I don't do stuff I don't want to do.
Hmm.
I find people, if there are things that I don't want to do and I'm not good at it, but it needs to get done, I either hire people, I find somebody to do it. I don't do the stuff I don't want to do. I don't do stuff I'm not good at. And that was something that John Ashraf taught me is, don't waste your time in a business or in life trying to do things that you're not good at and you don't want to do. Focus on the things that you're good at, strengthen your strengths, and let other people who have strengths where your weaknesses are
Hmm.
to do the other things.
Hmm.
And boy, that's really good advice because then you wind up getting to do all the things that you love.
Yeah, because even if you do something you love, there's always going to be components of that you don't love. Like even if
Right,
you want to be a pro basketball player, you have to get on an airplane at 2 a.m. and fly to a different city. So
right,
unfortunately, you can't have someone
right,
do that for you. But with regards to starting your own business or doing a career that you like, you can always outsource or get people to do the things that
right.
you don't love so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are things like when I travel to certain places, I sometimes have to eat foods that I don't really want to eat. Or I'm, being bombarded by energies and airplanes and stuff like that. But I've got mitigation and things to minimize it. And you were talking about travel secrets. I can tell, if
Oh
we have
yeah.
time, I can share some travel
Yes.
secrets with you, but so that I don't get sick and don't have problems when I travel. But yeah, there are certain things that I would rather just beam into a place and just show up there rather than having to fly a 26-hour flight across the globe, included, airplanes and airports and with all of the low level consciousness and the TVs blasting in in the lobbies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the lesser things. But even so, even doing that, I get to have fun because I get to goof on people a lot of times when I'm traveling. I get to meet people and goof around and
Yeah.
so but yeah, it's all in how you deal with things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and it's that emotional state. It sounds so. I don't know. It sounds so basic and so elementary, but man, maintaining a good emotional state and not getting too riled up about stressful events. I mean, if you're able to mitigate that, and let's say you have 100,000 stressful events in your life, the average person, and if you're able to cut the amount of stress or the depth of that stress that you feel by 50%, I mean, that's got to have an impact on your cellular biology and how your cells
Oh,
replicate. I
absolutely.
mean, for sure, right?
Well, and I'll give you an example. When I was traveling up north last week, I got a rental car in New Jersey at the
Mm-hmm.
airport, um, and I didn't get GPS because I have a phone with GPS, and I was
Mm-hmm.
using that. Well, my phone GPS absolutely would not work.
Oh.
And it took me all over the place in some crazy, circuitous route,
Yeah.
and I couldn't trust it. So, you know, somehow I found my way back to the airport, got back to the rental place, and I rented another car that had GPS built into it.
Oh, wow.
And it was more expensive, but I could have been griping about it and be ticked off. But it's like, I thought it was funny actually, and because I don't know, sometimes I just kind of pull myself out of my own situation and see the absurdity of things.
Right.
So I was. talking to the rental agent, telling her what was going on. I was joking around, laughing about it. And I like teasing people and having fun with them, so I was kind
Yeah.
of picking on her and teasing her too, and she loved it. And so she got me a nice deal on an upgrade, and and so I got this really nice vehicle with built-in GPS, and yes, it had strong EMF on it,
Mm-hmm.
but I also had my stress shield device with me, protecting me from it and other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I mitigated it, and I wound up getting to where I was going, and I was a little bit late, but it was no big deal. you know, a lot of people would get really bent out of shape over that, and maybe be nasty to the person at the counter. And then later, when I needed something, I came back by that counter, and that lady remembered me, and she was just as kind as she could be because I
Oh my
wasn't
goodness.
the usual, my rental car is not working.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we create karma that has to be sort of corrected or worked through, I
Right.
guess, right? If we do that. So there's that
Right.
issue as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love people. I love being around people. I mean, I get bombarded with crowds sometimes, and I need my alone time. I'm a Pisces, so I do need alone time. But
Yeah.
in general, I love people, and I can see also, because I've worked with a lot of sick people, I can see people's pain. I can see in their bodies. I can see their pain showing up in their physiology. I can see it in their face. I can hear it in their voice. And so,
Hmm.
so I normally just have a lot of compassion for people, and also I like to have fun. So it's like when I'm being groped by the TSA in the airports. I don't hold it against them. I like goofing around with them. As a matter of fact, when I see guys doing the pat down that are homophobic,
Yeah.
I love kind of pretending like I'm enjoying it, and making little remarks about it, just to make them a little more uncomfortable about it, and goof on them about it.
I love it.
So
Yeah.
it's yeah, but the reason that I've come to that place is because I've done a lot of work on myself. I've done a lot of trauma release. I've done a lot of therapies.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work on myself, and I still got a lot more to go. It's not like I'm perfect. I got issues just like anybody else,
Yeah.
which my
That's
wife will be happy to attest if you ask her.
we'll get her on the next show and it will be therapy session. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's fascinating because like knowing what we know and all the information that we're exposed to. A lot of people, have said to me, how do you have a positive attitude and how do you keep a positive attitude when you know all the stuff that you know? And at some point all of this stuff gets sort of filtered through spirituality and working in personal development and working on yourself, because if you know that you are being extracted for profit and you know that you are basically just a pawn in the system, it's really easy to get depressed about that. But that's why, like, the health has to be coupled with personal development and spiritual growth. It has to, right?
right,
Mm-hmm.
right. And even though we're basically in a slavery planet, there are ways of getting out of it. And I mean, back in the day, years ago, I became a sovereign citizen, and,
Mm-hmm.
got out of the tax system, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, and what I found was I was kind of trading one form of slavery for another, because I was always having to watch over my back, and always watch the latest laws and things to make sure I
Mm-hmm.
was compliant and stuff. So the powers that be have done a really good job of enslaving people on this planet. But even within that frame of work, you can still have a lot of freedom and a lot of joy. And that is very much a conscious decision.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the movie. You ever seen the movie Life of Brian, the Monty Python movie Life of Brian?
No, no, I
Um,
haven't.
oh, it's hilarious. I was actually a movie theater manager when it came out, so I saw it many times. But back in the 70s, I think it was late 70s, maybe 1980, comes and there's a scene. It's basically a parody of the Christ story. And at the end of the movie ends with this guy who was mistaken for Christ being nailed to the cross and being crucified. And while he's hanging there, there's a bunch of other people around him who are also being crucified, hanging from crosses. And one of the guys says, "Yeah, don't worry, everything will be all right." And they start singing this song, that always look on the bright side of life, even if you're being crucified.
Oh,
so,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my
so
gosh.
it's kind of like that. It's not that you are in denial of the negative. As a matter of fact, it's very important, I think, to be very aware of the dark side and the negative and what's going on, while maintaining your joy and abundance in spite of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you want to be in denial. It's like, oh, it's all love, light, and fairies. No, I mean, I've seen some really horrific, scary stuff. And yet, I've also seen solutions for all of these problems that we have on this planet. And so I know that these things can come out and most likely will. And so
Hmm.
I'm very optimistic. And in my own life, I have an amazing life. I mean, I'm just extremely blessed. I get to travel all around the world and meet some of the highest vibe people on the planet and have amazing adventures and get to eat food and I just
It's
have a
amazing.
great time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it'd be really easy to sit and complain about minutia or whatever.
Yeah. I read a book years ago called Rich Dad Poor Dad, the Robert Kiyosaki
Yeah.
book. And,
Yeah.
he had an interesting thing in there when he was talking about with one of his dads. They would always say, his parents would always say, oh, we can't afford this or we can't afford that. And he sort of reframed that, or the rich dad would reframe it and put his thinking cap on and sort of bring in another reality, which is, okay, how can I afford it? What would I need to do? How would I need to earn more money or turn off the siphon for money depleting from our account? How could we get this item, this house or car that we really wanted? How can we afford it versus I can't afford it? And that just opens up a whole sort of worldview and options for people. And so the same thing is true with this. It's like low dopamine people and very negative down people. There's enough to complain about for sure. Like there's a lot of bad stuff in the world, but how do we turn that around instead of saying, oh, the world is going to hell in a handbasket? How can we say, okay, what can we do? Okay, let's start thinking about solutions, because that's really ultimately what it's about. And I think that as you get healthier, you start thinking to yourself, okay, how can I be creative? How can I find a solution to XYZ problem? And that's how we slowly dig ourselves out, right?
Right. And you wind up feeling happy for no particular reason. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, it's like, a lot of times I just go around having the greatest conversations in my head with myself and laughing. And I think, well, there's no logical reason that I should be doing that all the time, but it just happens because I feel good. I'm 57 years old. I don't have any aches and pains. I don't have any health issues, major health issues and stuff. And so I feel good. So that alone is a huge part of it. And then because I've done a lot of inner work, a lot of spiritual work, a lot of trauma release and that kind of stuff. So my life is much easier than most people's, and I
Mm-hmm.
recognize that, and I don't take it for granted. I'm very, very grateful for it,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
therefore I also do my best to stay out of ego, because ego is also, that's where you can undo yourself as well, getting into ego and thinking that you're all that in a bag of chips,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody is. People, I get a lot of nice feedback and some negative feedback in various ways. And it doesn't matter either way, whether somebody loves me or they don't love me. It doesn't really matter because um, we are the ones that assign meaning to our life. In landmark education, they love to shock people by saying that life is meaningless. And then everybody gets uptight. Oh, life's not meaningless.
Yeah.
And what it really is that, well, independently, life may be meaningless. We assign the meaning to it.
Right.
We
Right.
as individuals assign meaning to our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, you know, what meaning you assign comes from your entire experience.
Uh-huh.
And so if you've had experiences that have given you negative beliefs, then you can reinterpret it. That's really what healing is. Healing is reinterpreting your past and your reality,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's physical or spiritual or mental or whatever. It's
Yeah.
just reinterpreting and then acting differently.
Yeah, and reframing it and using it for your good, right? And staying
Hmm.
positive about that. Ken, maybe we should reschedule, and maybe next time we can go over your flight mitigation strategies. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be fine. It's pretty simple, but basically, I carry a little first aid kit
Uh huh.
of detoxifiers with me, and so if I start coming down with anything, if I start getting a sore throat or congestion or anything, I take stuff that knocks it out. And
Okay.
then lately, I've been flying with a mask that you can get on Amazon.com for about 20 bucks that actually has silver and charcoal embedded in it. And so I'll wear that on airplanes because the air on airplanes is just horrifically bad,
Oh, okay.
and
You're
it's
gonna have to
recycled.
tell me about the name of that mask. I'll pull it up on the screen for people.
Let me see if I've
I,
got one around here somewhere. Where is it
that would be a
hiding?
helpful sort of travel sort of hack to have, huh?
Yeah, where is that thing? I just saw it laying around here somewhere.
Yeah. No worries. Maybe we can
Let
pull
me
that
see if
up.
I.
Um,
Well, I'll tell you what,
yeah.
I have it. I don't have the brand, but this is what it looks like.
Oh, look at
So
that.
if you see this on Amazon, it's like cloth, and it has charcoal and silver embedded on the inside, and it has a little breathing valve so that it
Oh,
doesn't, block your breathing. And it works. It works really well.
wow.
Um, yeah, so if you do like travel mask on Amazon or something, you'll probably find it.
Yeah, I'm searching for that
You
right
might
now.
actually, I could probably do that myself, but
Yeah. I
so yeah, that. Um, and I just don't get sick. I just don't. Let's see here.
yeah, I'm looking at that's a big deal, right? Oxygen and the amount of pathogens that are in the air, especially in airplanes, right? I mean, it's a big deal.
Well, yeah, because the airplane air is recycled and it's not clean. And I mean, you sit there when they first disconnect from the terminal, and usually you can smell the exhaust from the engines coming in because of the way they route the. Let me see. Let me try face
I
mask.
I
So
brought one up
it's yeah.
here. Is this one up that I have on the screen now? Dust respirator. Um,
That's not the brand, but that's very similar to it.
yeah. Okay.
Gosh,
Well, that's okay. We can find it later.
yeah,
There's some other
yeah.
brands
Maybe you
here
can link
too.
to it. I can definitely find it. I mean, it's sitting right around here somewhere. I just saw it a little while ago.
Yeah.
The box for it,
Well, that's a cool
but
idea though to be able to do that. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so you take some homeopathics? Is that?
No, I don't do homeopathics. I do. There's a product called Accelerated Silver that I travel with,
Oh,
which
right.
is a monoatomic silver.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you've had Sarah Banta on your show, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah, we have her stuff in our store. I know you have her stuff in your store. I love that stuff. It's
hmm
great, isn't it?
hmm Yeah, there's a lot of confusion over silver products, and some of them are not really good for the body. Some of them, the particle sizes are too big. So she's got a really good one, and it works well. So I always travel with that. I have like a nasal mister that I keep that in so I can spray it in my nostrils and breathe it into my sinuses. And that's really good if you start getting congestion. So when I land from wherever I'm traveling, as soon as I get to my room, I will spray that in my sinuses and flush stuff out. And usually a lot of mucus and stuff will come out.
Oh my goodness.
And uh, and then I also always travel with chlorine dioxide, either MMS. If I'm going overseas, I'll travel with MMS, which are two solutions that you mix, and it creates chlorine dioxide, which I put into 6 ounces of lemonade sweetened with stevia, and drink that. That is like my silver bullet. That kills pathogens big time. And usually those are all I need. But I'll take nanozeolites like the advanced TRS from Cosiva. I always bring those because those will grab onto toxins and pathogens. Because you never know. Sometimes you may be picking up a toxin. Sometimes you may be picking up a bacterial or viral pathogen or a parasite. In case of food poisoning, you might get a mold or something like that. So I bring stuff that will kill pathogens of whatever kind, and then also things like the nanozeolites that will pull toxins out of the body,
That's fascinating. And
and
where
it
do you get
works.
the MMS from?
kvlab.com.
Oh,
Yeah,
KV.
the guy that sells it, he actually has a license to create and sell chlorine dioxide. He sells it for municipal water systems, and so that's where I get mine.
Oh, interesting. Okay, let me pull that up on the actual page here. People can take a
And
look
of
at that.
course, if you Google chlorine dioxide or MMS or CDS, which is chlorine dioxide solution, you'll see all kinds of FDA warnings and people saying that it's toxic. And believe me, when I was first told about it, I was told about it by some fellow students at Hippocrates Health Institute, and I absolutely didn't believe it. And I was like, there's no way that I'm going to be ingesting or recommending anybody to ingest bleach
Yeah.
because that's what it creates. But I wound up getting Lyme disease, and so I thought, well, let me see how this stuff works, and I tried it out, and it got rid of Lyme disease in 3 weeks. I didn't even take it regularly. I was just kind of taking a hit or miss.
Oh my goodness.
And so that opened my eyes up. So then I started doing testing and doing blood tests and quantum biofeedback and stuff to see what it was really doing in the body. And what they say about it is true. It initially it raises chlorine levels in the body, but then over a couple of hours, it's metabolized into massive amounts of oxygen and a small amount of sodium. And so you'll see the sodium levels elevate a little bit, but the oxygen levels massively elevate in the body, and the chlorine levels go away. And um, so I always take it, and it's been a godsend for me
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have to worry about. I mean, there used to be sometimes I would come back from travel and I would be sick for weeks. Like if I picked up a chemtrail bug, quantum biofeedback will identify a lot of biowarfare agents and GMO, what they call cross-domain organisms, which are genetically modified crosses between bacteria and fungi or other organisms.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go and get quantum biofeedback and see what was going on. And sometimes those chemtrail bugs can take weeks or months to get rid of if you don't know about these supplements that will kill them off and pull them out of the body.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do to mitigate travel for sure.
Mhm. And then just living food,
Yeah.
eating a living food diet. We're the only organisms on this planet, from bacteria to whales, that eat cooked food. And
Mm-hmm.
it comes with certain problems as long as you overdo it. The body can adapt to a certain degree, but only maybe 20% of your diet
Mm-hmm.
it can adapt to cooked food. The rest of it's got to be uncooked food.
Mm-hmm. So Ken, in wrapping up here, I wanted to tell people about your site, and I've sort of brought it up at different times during the show when you've been talking. I'm looking over here at the products and the equipment and things like this, and let me bring that up and just tell people a little bit about your site, what you do. Do you work with people individually? I know you're doing a lot of talks and things like that. So share people a little bit about your site and maybe the direction you're going to with the membership website too.
Yeah, the website is freshandalive.com, and my blog, where most of my information, like teaching information, is on, is freshandaliveblog.com. And I have a YouTube channel where I've got a lot of educational stuff. And we do, we sell products that support health naturally. And we will be, in the next few months, creating a membership site that people can, become members of, and it will be for very low cost. Basically, it'll be free. Um, we may charge a few dollars, whatever the legal requirement is, we'll charge a few dollars so that people can go into contract with us, and then we can share with them more information than normally. Because, see, when you're a businesses public business speech is not protected by the Constitution. It's considered business language and it's not protected by the Constitution. But when you're in private contract with somebody, it can be protected. um, and so we can tell more truth if we go into private contract with people. So that's what the membership site will be about.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, people will charge a very small fee, and then they'll, wind up getting a discount from us if they buy anything. Um, but that way we can tell more about what some of our stuff does, and, have more testimonials and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really cool. So are you going to be launching that pretty soon?
I would say my intention is to have it launched by the end of the year.
Okay.
Working on the, the content for it right now.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. So you're going to be educating people and practical information about what they can do to improve their health. And man, it's awesome. You're doing
Yeah, I'm
such
providing
cool
more
things.
information on individual products and things and how to use them more. Um, Yeah, I haven't done individual consults since 2012, so I don't have time to do individual
Uh
consults
huh.
anymore. Um, but we will have information to our members available so that they'll understand more about how to use, our products and protect themselves in general against health threats.
Yeah, yeah, definitely cool. Yeah, check out Ken's YouTube channel. I was watching a video just recently of the liver flush, the specific kind of liver flush that you do that's very different than the average liver flush out there that most people have been talking about. So, a lot
Yeah.
of cool stuff on your YouTube channel. If that's any indication of what you have in your members area, that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, that's it. Well, because of my background and the things I've been exposed to, I don't do a lot of things the way, a lot of people in natural health do. It's like the liver flush.
Mm-hmm.
Typically people will do these cleanses and drink large quantities of oil to make the liver and gallbladder spasm, but that's a dangerous way of doing it because you could
Yeah.
eject people that are very toxic. It can eject stones that can get stuck in their bile glands and send them to the hospital,
Not good.
possibly even kill them. So
Yeah.
I have that liver flush and other things I use like herbs and things that will dissolve the stones, including kidney, gallbladder, and liver stones over a few weeks without any of that. And it tastes good too.
Wow.
I like doing things easy.
Yeah, easy peasy. Well, Ken, thanks so much for your time today. And man, I just love what you're doing. And if you ever make it out to Southern California, let me know and we'll do a podcast in person. That'd be fun.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then we'll go out and have a good time. I always,
that'd be great.
I know all kinds of cool people all over the place, especially California. And I was just up in when I was in New York, and there's a movie star, very famous movie star who turns out was a fan of mine. So I got to hang out with her and have
Oh, no
dinner
way. That's awesome.
have a good laugh. Yeah.
Wow.
So same thing out in your way. I know lots of people out there that are a lot of fun. So we can get together and have some fun.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be a lot of fun. Well, thanks. So your website for those that want to check you out is freshandalive.com.
Yes,
Fresh
that's it.
and Alive for those that are listening on the audio podcast. All right, Ken, thank you so much, man. I just love the work
My
that you're
pleasure.
doing and just empowering people and teaching people on all these different levels. I just think it's amazing, and we'll have to do it again and not let so much time pass by this time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely.
Exactly. All
Awesome.
right,
Well,
my friend. Well, it's
all
good
right.
to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye. All right. Well, there you go, Mr. Ken Rohla. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that show. If you guys are watching this and new to the podcast, new to the channel, we do broadcast live 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. So make sure to stay tuned for the next live show coming up, which is going to be on Friday. We're going to talk with Dwight Lundell, medical doctor, about heart disease. And then next week on Monday, we have Zirin. He'll be talking about Lyme disease. And he has a really cool channel called Know How Things Work. And he's a musician guy, but really diving into EMF and Lyme and all this kind of really interesting stuff. So we'll be talking with him. And then next Wednesday, Dr. Nick Berry, Botanical Passion, Essential Oil Wizardry. Then we've got Krista Gerard. We'll be talking with her about excuse me, family constellation therapy. I could say that. Family constellation therapy. We did a show recently about that with, I forget what his name is, Brian Mole, I think. And that was a really cool show. No, Brian Mole, my bad, is going to be on Monday. We'll be talking with him about diabetes, blood sugar. So we're exploring a lot of really cool things on Extreme Health Radio. So if you haven't subscribed, if you haven't, leave us a review on iTunes or anything like that, make sure to subscribe on Facebook, on YouTube. The best thing to do would be to sign up to our newsletter, and we send emails on Mondays and Thursdays. And that way you can keep up to date with all of the shows. And I'm working on getting the upcoming shows as well so that you know what's coming up into our newsletter. So we're working on that. So that way you never miss anything. And I want to make sure that you guys get access to all this information for free. And something I wanted to share with you guys too, just in wrapping up here, let me take these off. I have these new air tubes I got them from our from Blue Shield that are in our store, and I really like them a lot. Yeah, I wanted to share with you some interesting. If you follow us on Instagram, you probably know that recently I came down with a little bit of a cold, and it started in my throat, and I was feeling it. And in the past, there have been times when I had antibiotics before, probably in the late 90s, before I knew anything about health. And it was really, really bad to the point where my throat would swell up and I couldn't talk. It was unbelievably painful. And I felt like this was happening a couple days ago. And so with all the knowledge that I have after interviewing 600 guests and being involved in this sort of alternative nutrition field since 2003, and with a ton of tools at my disposal, I figured, okay, I'm just going to throw everything at this thing. And you know what is interesting is I beat this thing down in a matter of hours by getting a IV infusion. If you guys don't know what that is, it's basically, they call them like Myers cocktails, which is a standard sort of mix of different nutrients that you can put in, like glutathione, calcium, magnesium, and mostly it's vitamin C. And I felt this flu coming on in my throat, and I got this infusion at Spark Health, which is a place down in Carlsbad, California. And I'm telling you, this thing just wiped it out. I started feeling better almost immediately. And that next night, I woke up the next morning and just felt amazing. So something to think about. If you're getting sick, maybe go to acam.org or icim.com, and you can look up for integrative doctors or practitioners in your area that do vitamin C IV infusions. I was going to get just vitamin C, but they offered other nutrients there, like glutathione and calcium and magnesium and things like that. So I figured I'd get all of them. I think baking soda was part of it as well. Sodium bicarbonate, and man, it just knocked this thing completely out. So a little tip for you, if you guys you feel like you're coming down with a flu or cold or something that you might be able to do, if you can search for people in your area. This after show is kind of the most fun part about this show, and I see a ton of people in the chat room that are sort of new that I've never seen before, so this is cool. And it's kind of fun because, we get to learn a lot and talk with each other. Maria is here. Great to have you, Maria, again. And Ben taking pics, Gonza75, Mr. A lot of cool people in here. So thanks, guys, for joining us. Yeah, Rebecca Gilling, or Gilg, thanks for another great show. Yeah, you're so welcome. That's why I want to bring people like Ken on the show, is I think he's got so much to offer. And I think it's really, really important for all of us to realize that, it's health is not just a physical thing. There's so much more going on, from the subconscious mind to spiritual growth to personal development. All of these things play a role in our health, and I think those are the main triggers and actually what causes a health condition to happen. I think it's all in this esoteric, emotional, spiritual realm, why we get sick and why things happen to us, and all these things, because ultimately, in my opinion, we create our own reality, like Ken was saying. And I think that we come into this life with certain contracts, and I think that we create the different dramas and different things in our life in order to grow. And that's exactly what Ken was saying as well. And that's the only thing that really makes sense to me, is that, why would a 5-year-old child come down with leukemia, for example, if there's no greater purpose, or if they didn't come in with that as part of their contract, just saying it's a luck of the draw, that doesn't make any sense to me. Saying, oh, so-and-so was just unlucky. So-and-so just got diagnosed with this, that, and the other, and they're just unlucky, So I don't think that's the case at all. I think that there's powers higher than us, and we work with them sort of subconsciously or prior to coming into this life, which is why we create the kind of reality we create. And that's part of uncontrolling and uncoupling this programming that we're getting all throughout life from the programming of mass culture. And like what Ken was saying, what's so cool is that, if you don't create your own reality, someone else is going to do it for you. So that's why it's so important, guys, to take an active part in how and what kind of life you're living. That's so important. So it's just so important. And so reconnecting with that, like Ken was saying, he's working, at certain times 80 hours a week. It's because he loves what he's doing, and I love what I'm doing, so helping people, seeing people take greater strides in their health. And basically the idea of the show is to allow people to come to an understanding that they have much more of a control over their own biology than we think. So this idea that we have a gene for something, and that we are beholden to the gene because we've got the BRCA1 gene or the BRCA2 gene, or we have this gene or that gene, or this runs in my family, that runs in my family. All of these things are simply not true. Sure, things have biological markers in our family system, but the ability for us to manipulate and to control our own biology, that's kind of what they call biohacking, is so high that we don't even understand it. So coming to that full realization that we don't have to be subjected to the same diseases our parents had, the same diseases our grandparents had. We don't have to be beholden to that. That doesn't have to become our life. And so when you start deconstructing and uncoupling the programming that's been so brilliantly interwoven into our very psyche, you start pulling that out like a parasite and just uncoupling and unweaving that from our consciousness. Then we start realizing that we have much more control than we think, and that's the whole point of the show, is to empower all of us. Fear, like Ken was saying, is the greatest way to manipulate and control the masses. And so when you can step outside of fear, then you're not easily as controllable. And if you're not easily as controllable, then you're going to start making rational decisions. And then you're going to make decisions that are going to make you feel good. And then you're going to begin to take better care of yourself. And that's really what it's all about, is extracting ourselves from the fear that is our modern life. Everyone is designed by our modern culture to be afraid of everything, right? And so that's why it's so important to get rid of that fear out of our life. Fear is what controls everything. That's what controls everyone to buy what they buy and to make the decisions they make, is because of fear. And so for all of us to understand that, like Ken, I'm just a person just like you, and just trying to do my best. And we're all trying to do our best. And as soon as we can start loving ourselves and accepting ourselves for what we're doing, it's so important. That's the first step. Because why does someone who knows a lot of this stuff not take action on it? Well, the difference there is self-worth and valuing yourself and having a mission. And that's what all of this is all about. It's all designed to get us back on track. See, we've all been sort of taken off track by culture, by finances, by relationships, by debt, by philosophies, by movies and culture and media, and all these things take us off of our predetermined path in life. And we're supposed to be doing certain things, right? And we know what those are, but we're just so removed from our own consciousness that we don't know what they are, because we use in our culture our mind. We're never in our body. We're always stuck in the mind, thinking thoughts and then beating ourselves up for thinking those thoughts. And we get disconnected from our actual mission. And once we can all get back to our mission, then we can start making some real progress, I think, in the world today. And so that's what our show is all about. And thanks, guys, for being here. You guys are talking a lot about eggs in the chat room. I feel like I'm at a party that I threw, and all of you guys are sort of talking amongst yourselves, and I'm not a part of it. But now I'm looking at the comments. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay. Cool. You guys are. Zakia says, I buy my eggs from Texas company called Vital Farms. They are pastured eggs. They're pastured eggs. I get them from Whole Foods Market. Boy, and does it get expensive buying the eggs, but it's well worth it. Yeah, for sure. I live in Los Angeles. I want to live in a tiny house in a small piece of land somewhere in the countryside. Yeah, I'm with you. Potentially moving to the country or moving to the wilderness or something. We just had a building biologist come to our house, Brian Hoyer, who was on the show recently. Oh, thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. Awesome. I think I got your email the other day too. Did you write me an email? I think you did. But we just had a building biologist come to our home the other day, and my God, I swear to you that we are living. So we moved into a place. We didn't buy it, but we moved into a place, and it's sort of family owned. So we're living there, and it is incredibly toxic in terms of EMF. And we're going to be releasing a bunch of videos from Brian Hoyer, who was on our podcast a while back, and he went through our house and just showed all of the dirty electricity in the walls. He showed all of the EMF, the wireless. There's a 5G tower that's right next to our neighborhood, and man, I tell you, when you start looking at the actual instrument spike, you start realizing, man, we're living in a toxic soup here. And so that's the big thing, is that we need to manipulate our environment and our lifestyle, and change our lifestyle if we want to get healthy. And that's really what it's all about. See, our bodies just respond to the environment. That's it. It makes sense, right? That's the only thing that makes sense why cancer rates have gone from colon cancer 1 in 36 to 1 in 2 in 119 years. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense. Our environment is incredibly toxic, and we just got shown how toxic our environment is, and we will be releasing those videos on YouTube if you guys want to subscribe to the YouTube channel and see those videos. Not sure if we'll do them all separate or put them together in one big long video, but we did about 10 videos or 12 videos. So I mean, talk about mind opening. So we'll make sure to put those on the channel soon. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to head out because this is about 2.5 hours long, and this is awesome. You guys are still here. This is so great. You guys are incredible. Thank you guys for your support in our store. Let me show you a couple of the other products that I was going to show you actually in our store. The Bellicon Rebounder. Make sure to check this out, guys. If you haven't started rebounding, I would highly recommend rebounding every single day if you really want to take control of your health on a physical level. This is an incredible device, and it uses G-force technology and to stimulate the lymphatic system of your body. And that, the lymphatic system, there's 3 times more lymphatic fluid than there is blood. So it's incredibly important to clean and cleanse your lymph system. So make sure to check out the Bellicon Rebounder if you're in the market. You can learn more about it on the site too. And then the Relax Far Infrared Sauna is something that I sit in every single day. I love this device, and this is where I watch all my documentaries. This is where I watch Netflix videos and Amazon videos and the YouTube videos. This is an incredible device to help sweat chemicals, toxins, and poisons from your body. So I love this thing because it's portable. It's affordable. It's not $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and you sweat like crazy. All of these toxins and chemicals from your fat cells. So I'm really a big fan of sweating as part of a daily protocol. So I just wanted to tell you guys about that, and just thank you guys for supporting us in our store, supporting us by signing up to the Extreme Health Academy. If you guys don't know, we have an Extreme Health Academy where we take all the concepts that we talk about on the shows like this in practical ways, and how do we implement them, and that's what we do inside the Academy. So there's probably links below this video to the Extreme Health Academy with a discount code too, a free 14-day trial. So if you guys want to check that out, you go to extremehealthacademy.com and enter the code EHR14, and you can start a free 14-day trial. All right, guys. Well, I love you guys very much. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of the show. I love to see you guys in the chat room. It's really cool. Rebecca says, wow, I'm being really educated here, and I'm watching this on my phone. I live in the boonies, and my internet in my home is not working today. I use my phone all the time for research, especially YouTube, so I do a lot of right things, but the phone is a bad one for me. Wow, Veronica's from Spain, loves our show. Thanks, Veronica. I appreciate that. Bonnie says, can't wait to hear the topic will be today. That was earlier. Mind control and the battle for human consciousness. How do you like that? So cool stuff. All right, my friends, I love you very much. What's today? Wednesday? So stay tuned on Friday for the show about heart disease, and make sure to send it to your friends if you have any friends that are currently dealing with heart disease, because I think all disease is reversible. We can reverse these things. The power to heal is truly ours. So just know that you're doing the best you can. Forgive yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. Just focus on the good things that you're doing, and everything will work out for the best. So we love you very, very much. Again, this was episode 626. So go to extremehealthradio.com/626, and we'll put the show links there, the sponsors, and all that good stuff if you're listening on the podcast later in the future. All right, guys, we love you very much, and thank you again for all of your support, for sharing our shows, and for patronizing our store, and all of that good stuff. So we appreciate that, and we'll talk to you very soon. I'll see you Friday at 10:45 Pacific.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse of